Classes in session, hitting the books. College football betting show Monday, December 16th. Bowl preview part 2. This week on the show, Ian Cameron and Connor Mack with you. If you have not watched last Monday's episode yet, make sure you check it out because we did all the bowl games from the very first one up until Christmas Eve, December 24th, the Hawaii Bowl with San Jose State and South Florida. So every bowl game up to and including the Hawaii Bowl on Christmas Eve. We previewed it last week on the show. Today's show, we will do the bowl games following Christmas Day from December 26th to New Year's Eve, December 31st. We will do preview every bowl game post-Christmas, between Christmas and New Year's Day. And we will also revisit the first round college football playoff games at the end of today's show. We'll give you probably a little bit more of an insight, more analysis. We'll dig into the stats a bit more and give you our more solidified opinions on those 4 games. Because last week we just kind of gave initial gut reaction type of opinions. We'll have definitely stronger opinions on those games moving forward. Or on the show today, talking about the 4 college football playoff first round games. And I'm looking forward to those. We got the one on Friday with Indiana, Notre Dame, and then, of course, 3 on Saturday. Saturday's going to be nuts, C-Mac, because we have the 3 college football playoff first round games. Basically, from noon until midnight, you're going to have college football playoff action. You got 2 big NFL games also taking place on Saturday with Houston, Kansas City, and then the other one is Pittsburgh and Baltimore. So you've got those 2 huge games on Saturday. They're both good NFL games, both of them. So it's going to be a real fun Saturday between the 2 NFL games, which are good on paper, and then the 3 college football playoff games. So exciting stuff ahead, my friend.
Yeah, super exciting. I got to say, we got a bunch today. A ton of games, and there's a ton of transfers. I try to do our best here. So I'm throwing this out early, Babano, because I'm doing a ton of research. I'm sure you do too. If we miss something, I'm sure we'll catch it in the comments. But we're trying to do our best on who's in, who's out, because these games are still a ways away, and people have already left. But we'll do our best. Okay, I want to throw that out there because I had a feeling.
Oh, I guarantee you, there's been
every year we've done this.
Yeah. No doubt. There's been a million changes in player opt-outs and movement and player departures just from the games we talked about last week. On the show. No doubt about it. So some of the info on that is all on that show that we gave you last Monday is probably already stale and obsolete. But that's what you get at this time of year, unfortunately. With these bowl games, player opt-outs, and some of these player opt-outs and transfer portal moves, they're not going to be announced until a couple days before the actual game. Look at the Western Kentucky game. All of a sudden now this Caden Veltkamp who's transferring out still going to play in the bowl game. We didn't know that until 20.
Well, look at Lopez. Was all gonna play all week, but all of a sudden he's gonna play in this game. And then, what was that, an hour and a half or 2 hours before kickoff? He's not gonna play. So, I mean, come on. Yeah,
it's a headache to keep track of all of it. That's for sure. But we're not alone here. This is every college football bettor and handicapper on the planet that's got to deal with this same shit. So that's a good thing. Everybody's in the same boat. All right, let's get into it. We'll begin with the bowl games on Thursday, December the 26th. This is the GameAbove Sports Bowl. This is at Ford Field in Detroit, home of the Lions. So we know it'll be indoors, climate controlled, no weather issues here. Pittsburgh and Toledo. Pitt Panthers 7-point favorites, 51.5 the total in this game. Again, with player movement, certainly something we have to watch for in all these games, and it's certainly something you've got to factor in to all your handicaps of these games. It looks like right now Eli Holstein, the Pitt quarterback, and Desmond Reed, they're going to miss this game due to injuries. They do have a couple of banged up offensive linemen. We'll see if they're able to return for this game. And plus, Nate Yarnell, the backup quarterback, who saw time for Pitt this year when Holstein didn't play, he's already in the transfer portal. He's out of the program, and he is not sticking around for the bowl game. So if Holstein is not healthy enough to play in this bowl game, we could be looking at a redshirt freshman and David Lynch starting at quarterback here for Pitt. And again, this is a guy with very limited reps, pass attempts at the college level. So that's definitely something you want to be aware of for this particular game is the situation. And that's why it's tough to move on it right now. And it's probably why we've seen a little bit of money show up for Toledo here in this game. Plus, MAC underdogs. We saw it, and that was an ugly cover for Western Michigan, but it was a cover nonetheless in the first bowl game against South Alabama. MAC underdogs in bowl games have done well, believe it or not, against the number the last few years. So maybe that's another reason why Toledo's taken some money, plus the fact that, Pitt could be down to a very inexperienced quarterback here at starting for them if Holstein isn't good to go. Meanwhile, for Toledo, from all indications, they haven't had nearly as much movement based on opt-outs and transfer portal movement, which is good to see. It's a little bit more of a stable situation for them. The one that's concerning here is Larry Stevens, the receiver. One of their better ones went in the portal. But other than that, a lot of their other receivers are still in place. Running backs, in place. Tucker Gleason, still going to probably start at quarterback here for the Rockets, a guy that started most of the season for this Toledo team. So we'll see how it goes. Certainly if it's Holstein at quarterback, I can make a case for the over because Pitt plays fast on offense. We know that. And even though their offense kind of, wasn't as good down the stretch, you're kind of stepping down in class here against Toledo's defense, which can give up points. So indoors, of course, so there won't be weather issues. So my first thought was bet over the total in this game. And certainly I lean Toledo at 7 or more. I mean, Toledo's not a team I want to lay points with, but you got to wonder about motivation for Pitt. You got to wonder if Holstein's going to play. They do have way more opt-outs and departures roster-wise compared to Toledo for this game. MAC underdogs have been strong the last few years, ATS in bowl season. So put it all together, lean Toledo, lean over. I have not moved on either one, though, as of yet. C-Mac, what do you think here for the Sports Bowl? Pittsburgh, Toledo.
Yeah, I think it's going to be Lynch that's gonna start here, and he really just got in 2 games. He's 6 of 8 with a pick.
Yep.
And most of that game was Louisville.
Very small sample size. Yep.
Yeah, so it's really tough to go off that. In Pitt, how much in a game like this, kind of get up for? They started out 7-0. They lose their last 7 games or whatever it was, 6 games of the year, and just kind of got their ass kicked. Everything kind of rolled at once, whether it was turnovers, the defense finally went to shit. People, finally just playing teams that they just weren't better than and got their ass kicked. This is where I want Toledo. I want them as the dog. This team's usually the favorite all the time in the MAC. I want to fade them. Kind of like Memphis we talk about. It's rare you catch them over a touchdown. I think they're live here. And one of the reasons, their defense has been pretty good all year. It's had some challenges at times, in the MAC, but overall, I think they've been pretty good and pretty good numbers against the run and versus the pass. So I think they can hang in this game. Just wait to the last minute, get everything in and out. But over the touchdown here at this number, Toledo for me as well. Nothing on this total. I think I'm gonna touch it at all.
The only thing I'd be concerned about, because you're right, Toledo's defense wasn't that bad, but they're going to, if let's say Holstein does play, and I have my doubts too. It wouldn't shock me if it's
I don't think he
either.
is.
But
Yeah.
Different level of speed athlete, the skill positions aren't bad here for Pitt. And I'll say this about the MAC schools this year. I think offensively, other than Ohio, other than Bowling Green, and other than at times Northern Illinois was a decent offensive team, I don't think there were a lot of great offenses in the MAC this year. There were a lot of bad ones. Akron couldn't move the football. Kent couldn't move the football.
Oh, yeah.
Northern Illinois was up and down. Buffalo was up and down. Ball State was up and down offensively all year. It was not a great year for offenses in the MAC. So Toledo feasted basically on some weaker offenses. Might struggle a bit more. But that being said, motivation-wise and just overall roster outlook for these 2 games, Toledo might be more invested in this game than the Pitt Panthers. All right, Rate Bowl. This is in Arizona. We've got Rutgers and Kansas State. K-State 7-point favorites, 51 the total here in this game. When you look at these 2 teams right now, we'll have to wait and see who's going to be, in the for Rutgers. It looks like they don't have too many opt-outs. That's the good thing, and nobody major. There's a potential that Monangai, the one, is who we're going to have to watch out for. He may not play, but again, this is early, so we're going to have to find out for sure closer to kickoff here for this game. But here's what the bottom line with Rutgers. They're catching points. They're usually been a team that, off the top of my head, in the Greg Schiano era, they've been pretty good in bowl season. They've cared about the bowl game. I remember when they played Miami just recently in a bowl game, and they played very well in that game. They held up. They were clearly invested. They were locked in. There was definitely motivation for Rutgers in that game. They played pretty well. So my first thought is, I don't want to lay 7 with Kansas State here against Rutgers. Meanwhile, K-State, they were in contention for the Big 12 for a bit. And now it looks like, as far as they're concerned for this game, it looks like Avery Johnson's still there. There's a good chance that he probably starts this bowl game here for Kansas State. DJ Giddens, though, keep an eye on him. There's a good chance he might be hitting that. Yes, he's declared. So this is new information. He declared for the draft over the weekend. So don't expect DJ Giddens to suit up, the great running back here for K-State. In the Dylan Edwards is a capable backup, but still they'll miss DJ Giddens with him not suiting up. There's a couple of offensive linemen that have committed elsewhere also, so that could impact K-State a bit. Again, I have not, and I hate to be repetitive with this, but there's a lot of sides and totals that I've circled, but there's not a lot that I've locked in yet because I just want to make sure I've got my info fully lock, stock, and barrel of who's in and who's out before I move on any of these games. But I've got Rutgers circled for sure. And this would be a Rutgers or pass game for me. There'd be no scenario where I'd be taking Kansas State in this game. We've seen a track record of Rutgers showing up at the bowl game, playing hard, caring about it under Greg Schiano. Wouldn't shock me if we see more of the same here from them at the Rate Bowl in Arizona. C-Mac, what do you think here? Rate Bowl, Rutgers, K-State.
Yeah. I really don't want to lay points at all with K-State. I think they're going to have even more. I think Spivey's gone, like you talked about, Giddens. You got to at least look at the offensive line too, the tackles, and then we wait and see on some like these guys on the defensive side. They're just going to transfer and not going to play. Maybe you're right. They're pretty good here. Rutgers, just a few guys who might be out. This one's tough. I just, you know what? When I see a dog, I want to back Rutgers. There was the bad time where they kind of got injured. The defense got their ass kicked. I think they're pretty good. But I think I want more than a touchdown in this spot. So I had nothing really on this game, too. If I get over 7.5, I'd lean Rutgers. But we will see.
This could stay under too, because I know Rutgers had some overs when they had all those defensive injuries, but they did get a lot healthier later in the season. Now with the bowl game and the time off, they'll probably be as healthy as they've been in a long time on defense. So that
they played overs though. But, I mean, yes, we'll see. Yeah, but they kind of ripped I think 7 of the last 8 were over.
They did. Yeah. I've got it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 6 of you're not far off. 6 of the last 7 Rutgers games went over the total. So maybe that does carry over here. I'll say this about Kaliakmanis, the Greek stallion, 8th end Kaliakmanis. The completion rate's still not high enough for my liking, 54.8% for the season. But I'll say this about him. He's taken care of the football. He's done a really nice job not having those bad interceptions he had at Minnesota last year. Down the stretch, the last 5 games or 6 games. 5 games, I should say, since the USC game for Rutgers, Kaliakmanis has 8 passing touchdowns. 9 passing touchdowns and just 1 interception since the USC game. So he's not lighting it up. His numbers aren't great, but the one thing he's doing in a positive is he's not turning the ball over. And that's what's helped out Rutgers a bit.
He had that bad stretch.
Yeah.
Where he had a couple picks against Nebraska, one Wisconsin, UCLA. Like, you take those 3 games out, he went whatever. Well, I don't even know if he had many touchdowns in those games too. But man, I think he went. Then the rest of the games were 16 touchdowns and 2 or 3 picks. 3 picks.
Yep. No, he's cut out the mistakes, and that's what's helped Rutgers, because Rutgers did finish the season, win against Minnesota, win at Maryland, blowing out Michigan State. I was very impressed with that win to finish the regular season 41-14. And Kaliakmanis is taking care of the football. That's all he needs to do, because you got Monangai, you got a good run game. Just don't make mistakes, and he's done a good job of that. All right, 68 Ventures Bowl, Arkansas State and Bowling Green. This is a Sun Belt versus MAC tie-in bowl game here. We've got Bowling Green 7-point favorites, 50.5 being the total here in this game. Arkansas State, it looks like for the most part, other than there's a key pass rusher that Jaden Jones that's opted out and he's played a lot, but for the most part, you're talking about marginal, depth players that have transferred. We'll have to see on the Bowling Green side of the equation. The good news for Bowling Green is, look, their offense, I don't want to say lives and dies by him, but he's like the hugest part of the offense, and that's the great tight end, Harold Fannin Jr., who's had an outstanding year for Bowling Green. He's just been such a big cog in that team offensively. He is going to play in this bowl game, and apparently all the Bowling Green starters are likely going to suit up, and that's a good thing for Bowling Green.
Yeah, that's what I see on here.
That's motivation. There's no question, and like I said, Fannin's huge for that offense. I like this over, actually. I mean, now I lean Bowling Green, and I try to make a case for an underdog, but I think Bowling Green now kind of had some, I think this is a good thing that you hear the players excited to play because they fell short of being in the MAC championship game. They lost that game to Miami O, which put Miami, Ohio in the MAC championship game instead of Bowling Green. And it would be so easy to say, well, our season now, our goals, we didn't accomplish them. We wanted to win the MAC. We didn't. The fact the kids are all saying the starters were playing, Harold Fannin Jr., despite his NFL draft status, he's playing. That tells me I think Bowling Green's invested in this game, that they want to get something out of it, a W. So, and I think they're the better team anyway than Arkansas State. So this is one where I lean to the favorite. Don't know if I'll bet it, but I lean to the Bowling Green side -7 now that I know everyone's in. Arkansas State's still a horrible defense. They still give up a lot of big plays. I like the over though too, because now it looks like the offense is going to be intact here for Bowling Green. Like I said, for Arkansas State, I don't like their defense very much. I think they are a team that's really struggled on that side of the football, especially down the stretch, what we saw from Arkansas State. We had some ugly performances from them. The ODU game, they gave up 40. Louisiana, which is another good offensive team, put up 50.
The losses are bad.
Yeah.
But, the losses are just got their ass kicked.
State. Yeah, they shut down Monroe and Georgia State, who are not anywhere close to the offenses that Old Dominion had, Louisiana had. Even Troy put 31 on them. Texas State put 41 on them. And Bowling Green's a really good offense now, knowing that everyone's going to play. Fannin, the tight end, is going to play. So I think Bowling Green's going to move the football against Arkansas State. But Arkansas State has a good offense, and that's definitely the strength of the team. I mean, they've definitely gotten good quarterback play from Jalen Rayner. From all indications, he is going to still be the guy to get the start here at quarterback in this game for the Arkansas State side. So that's a positive for them going into this game. And he's a dual threat quarterback. He can run, he can throw it. It's a pretty solid Bowling Green defense, but I don't think Arkansas State is going to get completely shut out here. I think they're definitely going to be able to score some points as well in this game. So right now I lean Bowling Green and lean over the total here at 50.5 as well. CMAC, what do you think?
Yeah, even the few guys that are going to transfer, looks like they're all going to play for Bowling Green. Arkansas State should have just about everyone. I mean, I just kind of have here their safety Joyner that might not. I don't know. Maybe he'll play. Got to check on that. Yeah, the one thing, I like Bowling Green here a little bit. You know me, I don't love laying a touchdown with them. Anytime they're favorites, just hasn't been great. But I like that they're all in. But the one key that I always look at in this is they have the way better defense, I think. Way better. I know it was the MAC, but the teams they played outside of the MAC. I mean, did they play A&M, Penn State?
And they bottled them up for a bit. There were times that Penn State and Texas A&M were punting multiple times in a row. Like their defense held up relatively decently against really good power conference offenses. Yep.
Yeah. And the Arkansas State, the offense pretty good, can move the ball, but that defense is bad. I mean, a lot of these numbers almost all these categories are like 115th or worse in just about all of them. Some of the wins, like Monroe had a bounce back year. They have some tight wins that are pretty good, like Georgia State, the Troy win. Southern Miss not very good. But these losses, I mean, the Michigan game early on in the year, they cover that. But, I mean, Iowa State 52-7, 41-9, Texas State, you just talked about. ULL 55-19. Just, I mean, if they're not there, they could just get blown out here. So, yeah, this is the wait and see. I think Bowling Green, maybe just go Bowling Green team total here in this spot. We might have to go to that, Babano, instead of laying the 7 here.
Yeah, just in case there's some backdoor shenanigans or something late in the game. That's always what I typically do with the bowl favorites. Bowl underdogs, sometimes I'll just take the points. I won't bet team total over, but more so with the favorites, I'll take a piece of the team total over, not just laying the points. So that might be something I do, and I definitely like the full game over as well. This is in Mobile, Alabama, by the way. This game Thursday night, December the 26th. All right, let's turn to Friday now, December 27th. We've got the Armed Forces Bowl, Oklahoma and Navy to get the day started, noon Eastern. On Friday, December 27th. We've got Oklahoma 7.5-point favorites, 43.5 the total in this game. Of course, the big news is the transfer out of Jackson Arnold, the quarterback for Oklahoma. So it looks like Michael Hawkins, who's basically got a lot of playing time, obviously, second half of the season, is going to be the quarterback here for the bowl game on Friday, December 27th. Hawkins' numbers this year, when you look at the statistics and what he's put together, 48 for 77, 62% completions, 6 games he got into, only 1 touchdown pass, 2 interceptions. So again, he's a work in progress as a pocket passer. There's no question about that. He is definitely someone that, like I said, is definitely right now still trying to grow and mature as a college quarterback. But he's probably going to get this bowl start with Arnold, obviously, out of the equation, moving on. I think Auburn is where he went, Jackson Arnold, if I'm not mistaken. So it'll be interesting. There's a lot of players in the portal right now for Oklahoma, which means they may or may not play in the bowl game. And I find more often than not, those players don't play in the bowl game. But again, not confirmed yet. Just know that there's a lot in the transfer portal, and there's a few more opt-outs that could happen as well for Oklahoma. And by the way, they had a shit ton of injuries. I'm seeing at rotowire.com the depth charts, which I always have up on the screen when I'm doing this show with CMAC. There's like 8-9 receivers that are all questionable, and it's all injury related. Like they were beaten up to shit at receiver.
Yeah,
Oklahoma.
That's been like that all year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. So bottom line is you've got maybe a bet against here for Oklahoma in this game. The injuries, the opt-outs, Michael Hawkins, makeshift situation here. One thing I don't do in the bowl season, I don't bet against the service academies. These guys come to play in the bowl game, whether it's Navy, whether it's Air Force, whether it's Army. We've seen these teams historically play very well in the bowl game. Navy gets the big win against Army. Great job by them to get the Commander-in-Chief trophy on Saturday. Winning outright is 6.5, 7-point dogs against Army. They totally outplayed Army. And look, Army, it caught up with them that, they played Notre Dame, physical game, UTSA, Tulane for the AAC championship game, 3 games in a row. Navy was rested coming off a bye week, and it kind of looked that way watching that game last week. But credit to Navy. It's not just that. They just outplayed Army. Now, you could say they're satisfied. I don't know. These, like I say, these service academies, they usually show up and you get their best effort every single time. That's why they've been good ATS teams over the years in bowl games. Any service academy, Army, Navy, you name it. More often than not, they've been a good bet in bowl season. So I definitely Navy or pass for me. Anything above a touchdown. CMAC, what do you think here? Armed Forces Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, just hats off to Navy. We talked about it just when those teams get together.
And there were some doubts to Blake Horvath. Would he be healthy going into that game? Oh, he was healthy. He played great. He was outstanding.
He played great. Yeah. And Daly just had his worst game of all year.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? With all those picks, he just had a rough game. But hats off to Navy. They were able to run all over him, and Horvath, he was great. Everyone will be in there. Like you talked about, for Navy should be all hands on deck. I think you take them. I lean under in this. The problem is just who's in, who's out for Oklahoma. Like, so all the whole offense here. And of course, you just said Jackson Arnold. I mean, who's going to play quarterback? Is Hawkins going to transfer too? I didn't look him up. Has he already hit that as well, Savannah? That was the lone.
Oh, he's still there. Casey Thompson's still there as of right now.
Thompson, yeah, okay.
Yep.
But Jackson, they're all gone. The couple of these linemen aren't going to play, and few linebackers. There's going to have a lot out. This is one that you'll want to look at real late. I lean under a little bit Navy's just going to run the football, and I don't know what we get. The thing is, bowl games just could be they're just a little bit different than the regular year. This could be a weird game that has a bunch of points. I don't really see it. Oklahoma played really to unders all year long, and we don't know who's really going to play on offense at all. I mean, like you talked about, these wide receivers are already transferring out. They didn't have any to begin with because they were injured. So I'm like, I don't even know who's going to play there. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely keep an eye on this as far as Oklahoma, because like I say, between opt-outs and portal transfers and injuries to the receiving corps, like you keep an eye on who's going to actually play for Oklahoma closer to the kickoff.
I mean, the tight end should be out. Sharp. I mean, everyone, yeah.
So definitely that's something to monitor. All right, next up, we've got the Birmingham Bowl, Birmingham, Alabama. Good matchup. This is actually one of the better matchups pre-New Year's Day, I think. Georgia Tech and Vanderbilt here. We got Georgia Tech 2.5-point favorites, 51.5 being the total in this game. So my first thought, naturally, with how awesome they've been as an underdog, although they weren't that in the final game against Tennessee. There were 2 times they didn't cover as a dog. One was against South Carolina, and the other was against Tennessee in the final game of the season. But other than that, Vanderbilt was, 6-2, I believe, ATS as a dog this year. My first thought, hey, it's Vanderbilt catching points. We got to take them here in this bowl game. That being said, it's kind of a surprise to me that Haynes King is going to play in this bowl game. And that's kind of changed things for me because he's the emotional leader of this team. You saw how he willed this team almost to a big upset victory in overtime against Georgia. They fell just short. He played awesome in that game. They do have a couple of people that have hit the transfer portal as well, including their great receiver, Eric Singleton. But it looks like, for the most part, we'll have to wait and see. But I think as long as Haynes King is playing, clearly we've got a situation where I think Georgia Tech's going to be interested because, often it's a situation in bowl games where if the general leads, the troops will follow, which is what we always hear Shaquille O'Neal say on the TNT panel. And that's the case. Haynes King's playing. You're going to get his teammates now ramped up to play probably in the bowl game as well. So this kind of takes the interest I have a little bit away from betting Vanderbilt. Now more to a game where, I probably don't have a strong opinion at the moment. In fact, I'd probably lean a little more Georgia Tech right now because I think with that run game, what they might be able to do potentially on the ground against Vanderbilt, maybe able to have some success there. We'll wait and see. But I think Haynes King playing makes a major difference into just how enthusiastic the Yellow Jackets will be for this bowl game. We know Diego Pavia in the offense, although they did sputter down the stretch. They looked like they ran out of gas a bit. Vanderbilt, the latter part of the season. There's some of their injuries mounted. The defense just hung in there the best they can, but eventually they wore down, and you could see it. Tennessee really had their way with Vanderbilt's defense in that final game. With the Haynes King factor and him playing, I think that matters a lot. And it takes me from wanting Vanderbilt, thinking about taking Vanderbilt, to now I probably lean a little to the Yellow Jackets as long as they stay below a field goal here as a favorite in this game. C-Mac, what do you think here? Georgia Tech, Vandy.
Yeah, the opt-outs that you just talked about, Singleton really leery the receivers. I think the safety might be gone for Georgia Tech, but not too much. And, of course, the backup. And, yeah, Haynes King going to play, it looks like, in this game, which is huge. They'll have most of their team, and it looks like Vandy will, that I have here. There's going to be a few guys gone.
Nobody major for Vandy. Nobody major for
Nothing
Vandy.
huge.
Yep.
Yeah, it might be a tackle or two and somebody on the defense, but nothing huge. When I look right to this, Savannah, under here at this number with these two teams, they're going to want to run the ball. I think both defenses were pretty good all year. I mean, they're not great, but they both want to run the ball, kind of control the clock. And yeah, I love Georgia Tech, but as soon as they're even this small favorite, I don't want it. Savannah, I lean Vandy here. Give me them. This should be a great football game with, it's good to see not a ton of opt-outs with some of the better players playing quarterbacks. So Vandy here in the under for me.
All right, good stuff. Next up, Liberty Bowl, Texas Tech and Arkansas. We've got Texas Tech 1-point favorites, 56.5 the total. Of course, Memphis, Tennessee is where this game is always played. Should be interesting here with Texas Tech. Their transfer portal situation right now. By the way, Baron Morton is going to it's injury related. He's out for the rest of the season, so we're going to see freshman Will Hammond start. Will Hammond started a lot down the stretch, so he's familiar. He's gotten playing time this year for Joey McGuire and this Texas Tech team. And certainly, like I say, you're not throwing a guy that's never taken a snap here in college football. This year, 3 games, 15 of 23, 65% completions, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. Like I said, he got into 3 football games, and he started the one against TCU, and he didn't play that bad, quite honestly. So, it's a guy that I pegged to go in there and actually have a decent game for Texas Tech. Assuming they can move the ball against Arkansas's defense, which is capable at times. We'll have to wait and see. Another thing we'll have to factor in, too, is for Arkansas, certainly in their transfer portal, they've got a lot of people in the portal right now. They've got receivers in the portal. They've got a slew of defensive players in the portal in the secondary, and a shit ton in the offensive line as well. So keep an eye on that. So this is going to be, from all indications, maybe a makeshift defense in the secondary in particular. One of their top pass rushers in the portal. A glut of potential absences from starting offensive linemen or players that were starting O-linemen. So how well is that O-line going to look? And how much continuity are they going to have for this particular bowl game? That definitely would concern you a little bit if you're going to bet on Arkansas. This is a game right now where, at the moment, kind of right now, leaning to Texas Tech, just because I think they're a little more fluid with their roster, a little bit more continuity. Certainly from an Arkansas standpoint, the offense, was hit or miss throughout the course of the season. Taylon Green does look like he's going to start, but, kind of up and down all over the map. I do kind of lean to Texas Tech here, just based on Arkansas really looks depleted. And unless we hear some of these portal players say, even though we're transferring, we're moving on, we're still going to play for Arkansas here in the bowl game. Unless I hear that, I think Texas Tech, just roster-wise, in a little bit better shape for this game heading into it. CMAC, Liberty Bowl, what do you think?
Yeah, that's what it looks like. You're just saying this, all these receivers going to be gone, tight ends, but then on defense, these linebackers, a few of their better DNs will be out for Arkansas. And what do we get here? I mean, all year, this Arkansas defense looked good, and they had these rough, horrible games, and they come back and play Texas, and it'd be 20-10 at home. So that was just weird, up and down all year. I think Hammond could come in and be all right, like you talked about. I saw him a little bit in that TCU game where he got most of the snaps. And I think this is a game they could kind of get up for here with Texas Tech. This is one I'd look to right before as well. Some of these games, a little bit on who's in, but a little bit on motivation as well. Like with all those guys out with Arkansas, it's like, are they going to be up for this game? So I kind of lean Texas Tech as well. I think this is kind of a good spot for them. And with them, I don't know what we get kind of from their defense. They have some tough numbers, especially you could throw it on them a bunch. So can Arkansas really take advantage of that? They should. So there should be points. I don't know if we get over. This is pretty 56.5, but I think we get points in this game, Bavano. So I'd look that way. The points all right, some way, somehow in this game.
All right, lean into the over here. Speaking of a game I do lean over with, this next one, and this is usually a higher scoring bowl game usually, Snapdragon Stadium in San Diego, the Holiday Bowl, Syracuse and Washington State. Syracuse 11-point favorites, 59.5 the total. That being said, while I did have the over circled, and I probably still like it, John Mateer is in the transfer portal, and this is the heart and soul and the lifeblood of Washington State's offense. The offense was him this year, throwing, running, and now you're going to take him out of the equation. And it looks like he's leaving, and it's not a surprise he's transferring, because the OC has moved on to Oklahoma, and it sounds like John Mateer might follow him there to Oklahoma and end up going to this. If the Sooners get him, that's not a bad get, because you're kind of scrambling at quarterback right now. Jackson Arnold wasn't it. You don't know if this Michael Hawkins kid is going to be the guy. If you can land a John Mateer here at Oklahoma, that might be someone that could have a chance to start for them next year. So with John Mateer entering the transfer portal, he's likely not playing in this bowl game. Now, again, he is not for sure confirmed he's not playing in the bowl game, but now it's looking doubtful that he's going to play. And if he doesn't, you're going to likely be turning to Zevi Eckhouse as the quarterback, who's got into one game this year, 6 for 7, he actually was pretty solid in that game. But it was against Portland State, FCS team, first game of the year, 6 for 7, 61 yards. Did engineer a touchdown drive, so he did get into that game a little bit. And I'll say this about him, he's at least going to have the bowl practices. And the one thing about Washington State, and this goes back to when Mike Leach was the coach here, the late, great Mike Leach, it always seemed like with this program, plug and play at the quarterback spot, and they're going to be fine. You'll find the next guy, and he'll be able to be okay. So if Eckhouse gets the start for Washington State with the bowl practice, and Syracuse is not the 85 Bears on defense. You can move the football on them. So, I think Washington State could still chip in offensively. Syracuse, with their great offense and Kyle McCord and company, should be able to move the ball on this Washington State defense, which was awful down the stretch. In fact, Washington State as a whole down the stretch just collapsed, basically. Horrific finish to the season for Washington State. So LaQuint Allen running the ball. And you look at, obviously, Aronde Gadsden, the great tight end, Pena and Meeks, the receivers, and Kyle McCord should have a field day against this defense. It's just a question, can Washington State score enough? Yeah, can Washington State, good prop game, you're right, player props for Syracuse in this game makes sense. It's too many now to lay with Syracuse. I'd probably look more towards Syracuse team total over rather than laying the 11 right now. And I think Washington State, even if Mateer doesn't play against this defense, could probably find their way to, 20 points, because it's kind of a plug-and-play system on offense that they have with the Cougars. So 59.5, even with the Mateer absence, quite possibly for Washington State. I still like the over. Syracuse team total over, probably worth a look. And as C-Max alluded to, maybe some player props on the Syracuse side of it as well against a defense that didn't show a lot of resistance down the stretch of the season. And that's putting it mildly for Washington State. C-Mac, what do you think here, Holiday Bowl?
Yeah, right when I was doing this last night, Browns is kind of the last few days, everyone will play, McCord will play. I went right to the team total, I think, with Syracuse. But sometimes, even in this event, I don't know what we get. I think we get something from Washington State. So this is maybe one I look just the team total first half, with Syracuse. The Washington State defense. And some of their best players that are defense are out. Their top corner is gone, right? He's out of there. O'Connor, the safety, and that was a secondary. That was great. That got thrown on. You mentioned Syracuse defense not too good. They're better though.
The secondary and the D line in particular for Washington State, they are a little bit gutted.
They've got some guys out.
The transfer portal. Yep.
And the running back won't be there, but they should be able to score here a little bit, Washington State. So I get why you like the over. I think you just stick to Syracuse here. Everybody in, all those weapons that they have that you hit on, that was on a lot of them. The tight end got Pena. Was on him at least 3 times this year. So, yeah, I think they take care of business here.
All right, there we go. Yeah, exactly, Myron. You're exactly that's exactly what I'm thinking. He's probably going to end up going where the OC went. He went to Oklahoma, departed after the season ended, and I think John Mateer is probably going to end up following him there. And like I said, he's got a chance to start if he goes to Oklahoma because there's no quarterbacks that are lighting the world on fire right now for the Oklahoma.
Unless they got a kid that's at a high school or some big group, but yeah, he should.
Okay, this next one, C-Mac, maybe you might even make an appearance. I don't know. Allegiant Stadium, Las Vegas Bowl on a Friday night. Texas A&M, USC on Friday, December 27th. Not a bad matchup. 2 name brand teams. Texas A&M, 3.5-point favorites, 52 the total here in this game. It's an interesting matchup, obviously. Now, for USC, officially, as if we didn't know already, that, it was clearly going to a parting of the ways with Lincoln Riley and Miller Moss, and Miller Moss is now transferred out once Jaden Mayava took over down the stretch. He now becomes certainly the full-time quarterback, likely going to start here in this bowl game for USC. We'll see how the things line up here for A&M, but it looks like for these two teams, looks like for them, they do have a couple of players in the trenches on the O-line and the D-line that are going to be obviously opting out. Connor Wegman's already transferred and gone to Houston. Not a surprise because they basically went to the other quarterback down the stretch. There you go. Mars blanked on the name. Marcel Reed for Texas A&M down the stretch. I do expect him to be the starting quarterback here for this game. I don't see any indication as of yet that he won't be. All things considered, I think A&M sounds, like they're going to take this game seriously. I would expect USC to do the same. It's a really tricky game from a side perspective, C-Mac, because I do think A&M's a little bit better team, a little bit better defense. But do I want to lay more than a field goal against a USC team historically under Lincoln Riley? This is where you want him as an underdog. He's not good laying points, but he's pretty good as an underdog. So I feel like I want to bet A&M because they're a better team. The price is, short enough that I lean to A&M, but do I want to go against Lincoln Riley and USC as a dog that badly? I'm not so sure, but I do think A&M, though, is a slightly better team. And I do think the running ability of Marcel Reed, which could cause fits for USC a little bit. I remember Riley Leonard and his running and his mobility really causing problems for USC in that late regular season game against Notre Dame. That's what stands out. Notre Dame was able to run the football from the quarterback spot with Riley Leonard all over that USC defense. And that's what worries me about this matchup for the Trojans, having to contain a mobile quarterback like Marcel Reed, something they've not been able to do really this year or any years in the past. Mobile quarterbacks have always given USC's defense problems. So I lean A&M. I don't know if I bet it, though. C-Mac, I do think they deserve to be favored, though, and they are. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, in this open, this is creeping out. Maybe it goes a little bit more. I mean, if there's success doing that, this game could go over. I don't know if I'm going to mess with the total really at all. SC, a few wideouts going, Robinson, Hudson, that won't be in there. And you hit on the others. A few of the defense for A&M. Of course, Wegman, we know he was going to be gone, and maybe a lineman or two. So both teams, I think, will have decent squads out here for this one here in Vegas for the Vegas Bowl. I'm interested in SC here. I just, as a dog now, I am. Even if A&M might be, I agree, a little bit of a better football team. This A&M team, you know what they've been the shits, Bavano? As favorites. Yeah, they won a few this year. Again, 3-9 ATS. I'd have to go back the last few years, just how bad this team has been, ATS, especially as a favorite. So I think this game will be close with Mayava. I think he could do some. I still don't love the SC defense. They were in that game with Notre Dame trading scores. Mayava just gave up some bad picks there at the end of the game, and they ended up winning by a couple touchdowns. So I think this game will be close here in Vegas. Both will have plenty of their fans here, but should travel well. So I'm leaning SC in this game, 3.5.
All right, we move to Saturday, December 28th. This is the Fenway Bowl, Fenway Pack there in Boston. UConn and North Carolina. We've got North Carolina 2.5-point favorites, 54.5 the total in this game. This opened at North Carolina 5.5 all the way down to 2.5 here in this game. And obviously the firing of Mac Brown, he's not around. Freddie Kitchens is going to be the interim head coach, the tight end coach, and he's likely not going to stick around when now that Chapel Bill has taken over as the head coach, Bill Belichick, of course, as head coach, and that's caused a lot of transfer portal movement. You've got multiple starting O-linemen out in the transfer portal, a couple other starters on the defensive side of the football. Omarion Hampton has declared for the NFL draft. That puts his status in this game in doubt, and of course, he's the great starting running back for them. Rucker, one of their the pass rushers, also likely going to be opting out for this game. So there's a lot of opt-outs here for North Carolina, and there's just so many moving parts, right? Mac Brown is fired, a makeshift interim coaching staff who are not going to be retained by Bill Belichick, who wants his guys in there, on the coaching staff now that he's been hired. This is just a complete bet against situation. It's just a question of, do you still want to take UConn at a worse number? Because this has moved a little bit. I think they can win the game outright. I just don't know where the enthusiasm is going to be for North Carolina. Not to mention they continue to be, a team that down the stretch they had that little resurgence, North Carolina, for just a few games there, and one of them was against that horrific Florida State team where they won big. But once again, down the stretch, the defensive issues started to come back to the forefront again for North Carolina. I know Criswell, the quarterback, showed some capability at times, but you talk about an old coaching staff out, a new one coming in. You got a makeshift interim staff that's coaching this bowl game that knows they're probably not going to be around. They're not focused on prepping for UConn. They're focused on their next job. Where are we going to go? Who's going to give us our next job opportunity? more so than getting North Carolina prepared to play a bowl game here against UConn. So 0-3 against the spread down the stretch. Like I said, the North Carolina defense started to collapse again. Now it was against UMass, but Joe Fagnano and the UConn quarterback, Cam Edwards running the ball along with Darrell Robinson and the receiving game. All of a sudden, they got some passing game going as well. Now, again, it was a UMass, but for a UConn team that's been kind of erratic offensively, that's a positive sign going into the bowl game that they finally got the offense going a little bit. I understand completely why the money's just poured in here on the Huskies. Certainly at 5.5, if you got that, it's a great number. I still think as far as motivation goes, UConn's excited to be bowling, given where their program is at. And for North Carolina, so many musical chairs, so many moving parts that you just wonder if there's any lick of focus and intensity and excitement for this game with everything that's going on, including, of course, bringing in Belichick and his cronies. So this is UConn or pass for me, even though the number's already moved. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, it does. Still, I think it's fine. Vivanna. I mean, if you got that, yeah, great job. This line should be flipped. Like, if you want North Carolina money, they should be catching. I mean, UConn, this team is pretty solid. They're not great. They went 8-4. They covered some numbers. That last game at UMass, the offense looked good. The defense gave us some points, but that's why I like them here.
They were very good against Syracuse. Very competitive against Syracuse. I remember that game. Only lost by 7.
Yeah, I mean, they beat Rice close, barely lost to Wake. I mean, they had some all right games. Lost a close game to Duke. They have the better defense, and you're going to tell me all these are going to play from everything I see. Just about everyone, and they're excited to be here. A team that has a better defense, has covered numbers against North Carolina with all the moving parts we talked about last week. Will Bill go there? He is there. Chapel Bill is. I can't believe he's a coach in college, but. Hey, he's got a college girlfriend. He wants to go back to college.
I really think that's why he's coaching college. He just wants the girlfriend to be happy, the little dime piece that he's got now to be happy.
She'll be cheering him on the sidelines. We better look out. All right, I'm not even going to say what I was going to say. Anyways, UConn here, baby. Take the 2.5. Just take the money line. I think they win outright. So much moving in and out. All these guys that are out. Criswell's a one positive, though, if he plays.
Yeah.
Every matter which he is. That's at least he was stapled there, played decent throughout the year. And some of the games I talked about, the Carolina defense look better at times. They're still soft though, and they'll get beat. They'll lose here.
Yeah, I mean, situationally, it lines up really nicely here for Jim Mora Jr. And his UConn Huskies. We'll see if it plays out that way on the field. All right, we go from one ballpark for a bowl game to another, from Fenway Park to Yankee Stadium, the Pinstripe Bowl. Boston College and Nebraska. We've got Nebraska 2.5-point favorites, 45.5 the total. Now, there's a lot of rumblings that maybe Dylan Raiola is on his way out of the program and transferring, but it's not been confirmed yet, so we'll have to hold off on that. He's still with the team as of now. Obviously, for Boston College, I got a couple, nothing major. We'll have to wait and see. They've had some injuries in a couple of position groups down the stretch. We'll see if they get back. But transfer portal-wise, not as bad as you'd think for Boston College. Yeah, Thomas Castellanos went to Florida State. That's no big deal. They had moved on from Castellanos, Boston College.
Yeah.
We gave Grayson James all those starts down the stretch, the FIU transfer. And to be honest with you, I don't know what the fuck Mike Norvell's looking at with Castellanos. If he thinks Castellanos is going to be the savior of Florida State football at the quarterback spot, I don't know. I'm not.
They're not going to win a lot of games. They could win 6 games. Yeah.
I'm not so sure that's going to be the cure for the elixir for Florida State. Meanwhile, Grayson James, look at how this Boston College offense picked up when he took over. They played really well on that side of the football down the stretch. And now you got the bowl game. He'll likely be starting here for BC. They end the season on a nice note, beating Syracuse. Very competitive against SMU, losing by 10 against this SMU Mustangs team that's playoff bound. Wins against North Carolina and Pitt by double digits to wrap up the season. 5 straight point spread covers, 5-0 ATS for Boston College down the stretch of the regular season. I already moved on BC. I got 3. I didn't get the 4.5 when it opened, but I did get 3, and it's still 2.5 pretty much everywhere. I think they win the game. I really do. I think they can win this game. I think still Nebraska's offense is a work in progress. They did show some signs with Dana Holgerson. The Wisconsin game was good, but they got shut down completely by Iowa 13-10. A work in progress. If Raiola transfers out, which is not confirmed yet, there's just rumblings he might, then we're going to see, and I've seen enough of him to know, I don't trust him. Heinrich Harburg at quarterback. That's not a bet on quarterback to me. Not at any point of what I've seen from him here at Nebraska. So this is BC or pass for me. I already bet it at +3. C-Mac, what do you think?
I think that was a good move. Raiola's gone. You telling me he's going to stay here? I don't know if they pay him a bunch of money. I think he's gonna get out of there, and I don't know if he's gonna have success somewhere else. Maybe.
Oh, it really fizzled for him. His claim to fame was that Colorado game, and then it was all downhill from him after that.
Yeah, it looked rough for him. So we will see. Though for Nebraska, they have more people out. Both these teams are decent spot. Some of the defensive starters will be out, I think, and opt out or transfer here for Nebraska. But it's pretty good for BC. I mean, the wide receiver Bradley, I don't see really anybody else. They might have a corner or two or safety, Babano, that's not going to play from everything that I hear. This is still a little bit away, 12 days away, so look out for it. Back you not, I rode BC down the stretch. I love that they got rid of Castellanos. It was like, because I thought James, he's kind of doing he's just going in there, he's plugging away, throwing for 250, a couple TDs. Yeah, I think he's looked really, really good. So I think it's them or nothing in this game as well. I lean under, but this total I think is just too low. Babano, and the weather here, I mean, it's kind of like at Fenway. It's a little warmer, 39 degrees, 40. So not too bad. So I think I'm going to stay off. I think it's just BC here. Even take the 2.5, or if you want to go money line, roll that way.
All right, I agree with that. And look, he's made a lot of dumb decisions and mistakes in the past. Bill O'Brien, we know he's had a tumultuous career, some good, some bad, some ugly. But that's one of the best things he's done was turning to Grayson James at quarterback. And like I said, and the one thing about Bill O'Brien, he's a quarterback guy. That's his background. That's his bread and butter. And he clearly saw something that, it's not going to work with this Castellanos guy. We got to cut bait and move on. And they did.
Yeah. And that's good. He's clicking, with the quarterback, with James. That's and the offense has been really good in those last 3 or 4 weeks. They're playing well.
No doubt about that. All right, New Mexico Bowl. This is also on Saturday, December 28th. A lot of afternoon games on that Saturday. This is another one. We've got Louisiana Ragin' Cajuns and the TCU Horned Frogs. TCU 13-point favorites, 58 the total in this game. I don't know what happened to the Cajuns in the Sun Belt Championship, but that was ugly. We know Ben Wooldridge was injured. Chandler Fields then got hurt. That was a big part in it. And then Beal came in, Daniel Beal, and certainly he was not good. And look, they've got obviously Fields hurt. Wooldridge, they say he'd be close to returning for a potential bowl game, but will he actually play Wooldridge? That's another story altogether. I don't think we're going to see Fields. We might see Beal, and he looked inept. He just was not prepared for that, not ready for that. He was totally ineffective against Marshall in that Sun Belt Championship game. I wouldn't be comfortable back in Louisiana if he gets the start here for this game. What's funny about TCU is that it looks like everybody, is pretty much all hands on deck other than maybe a couple of players. So, that's the good sign here for them. It looks like maybe the great receiver, Jack Beck, may not play. He did declare for the draft, but he said if he's healthy enough to play, he will for this bowl game. So the bottom line is with the quarterback injuries to Louisiana, could be down to Beal, who was terrible in the Sun Belt title game against Marshall. He might have to start by default here. Nobody's excited about that. I mean, TCU's taken just a shit ton of money here. 8.5 all the way up to 13.5. Total response probably to the fact TCU looks like all hands on deck, and Louisiana with the cluster injuries at quarterback probably influencing this number quite a bit. But I don't want to lay 13 in a bowl game. This is probably a game that I'm actually probably going to likely pass on. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, this one's kind of short. This is like the waiting game. I mean, because if Wooldridge is not going to play, you can't bet it. So I mean, he has to be in. And we saw what happened. I'm glad. I mean, that ended up taking place with Fields out of the game, but I'm glad I moved on Marshall. Their whole thing, and look, they're not even going to be in a bowl game with everyone leaving with their coach. But I'm glad I moved on them, because I was thinking of not, because everything that was going around, with the head coach. But they kicked their ass. That was great. I got to give kudos here. TCU. Now, to continue the bowl games the last 3 weeks, laying numbers, twice double digits and covering. I mean, I got to give it up to a team that can never do it with a bad defense. They did. So shout out to them. Louisiana just has their wideout gone. Their good tight end's going to be out too, right? For this game, maybe?
Looks like it, yeah.
Yep. Carter, pretty good tight end. He had almost 700 yards, 4 touchdowns. But TCU looks like all hands here. Like, this is one that if it goes over 2 touchdowns, then you hear Wooldridge is in, maybe grab Louisiana. Like, I mean, if he could be in, I think this team's still good enough that could maybe hang around in this one. So this is, a wait and listen. So all the news that comes in here. This game could have, it's a little, not too cold, 40. This game could have wind. There's a few out there when I was going through it last night. This one could have 15 to 20 mile an hour winds here.
No doubt. All right, next up, I could have sworn during the season when Miami had all those close calls, and I'm like, they're just a couple of games away from flirting with disaster, losing some of these games from playing, not for the playoff or being in the a big New Year's Six bowl game. But if they keep this shit up, Miami, with these close calls, they're eventually going to lose 1 or 2. I think we said this on one of our Hitting the Book shows earlier this year. We said they could all of a sudden end up playing in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. And sure enough, look what we got here. The Pop-Tarts Bowl and the Miami Hurricanes are in it.
Did you see the trophy? Yeah. The Pop-Tarts popping out of there? Yeah. What the?
I know. We always make fun of this bowl game just because, Pop-Tarts Bowl. It's a kid, favorite thing to eat for breakfast back when you were a kid. And now here it is as a bowl sponsor. Pop-Tarts Bowl, Iowa State and Miami. That's actually not a bad bowl game, all things considered. Miami, 3.5-point favorites, 55.5 the total. They're betting Miami, and I don't know, maybe on talent, yeah. It feels maybe a little bit short compared to Iowa State. And Iowa State, coming off the Big 12 championship beatdown and lost to Arizona State. Who knows where they're at, right? They had a chance to go to the playoff, win the Big 12. They didn't. Are they enthusiastic? You could say the same damn thing, though, about Miami. Miami was thinking playoffs all season long, at the very least, compete for a national championship. They can't do that now. I'm not laying 3.5 with Miami. I'm just trying to find enough reason to take Iowa State, at +3.5 or better. And from what I've seen, there's some potential opt-outs here for sure. But a lot of the players are saying, and I know Rocco Becht is likely still going to play. A lot of their
Ward's a go-to.
Defense have talked about how they all expect them to, the starters and the upperclassmen, to play for Iowa State. So this is one of the line moves that has me scratching my head a bit. Like, because I'm not excited to lay 3.5 with this defense too of Miami. What we saw from them, certainly the second half of the year, Syracuse went up and down the field in the game that cost Miami their chance at the college football playoff. Right at the moment at 3.5, I'm heavily leaning Iowa State. I'm sure if I don't hear anything major about injuries or all of a sudden a slew of their starters not playing for Matt Campbell's team, all of a sudden I'm very much interested here in Iowa State here in this particular football game. So again, let's keep an eye on it right now. But at the moment, definitely leaning Cyclones at +3.5 or better. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, Iowa State looks like everyone's in. I mean, the kicker, obviously, that's all they have really listed that I could find. In Miami, I mean, this number, Ward's playing, in this game. That's
probably what's done it, that Ward's going to play. But Restrepo, we're not sure. There's a chance he sits out.
I don't think he plays. And Horton just is gone, too. I don't know if he plays in this game, but he's transferred. I just saw that this morning. For Miami. Yeah, and whether Restrepo plays or not, I don't know. So look for that. All I have to say is this team was the luckiest 8-3.
Yeah.
I mean 6-6 ATS team, Miami. But out there. They got some crazy ones in the Duke game, like we talked about, but they lost to Georgia Tech. Wake just blows it in the fourth, then they lose to Syracuse. Should have been more money made off this bad Miami defense.
Yeah.
If everyone's kind of in here, how are we not taking this over here? I saw Iowa State get their ass whipped by Arizona. I saw this defense get gashed on the ground. Miami should gash them too. Just give me the over here. Take the over at this low number and cash it and walk away. Over.
Yeah, I never. For some reason, I didn't really give the total much thought in this game. I don't know why. I guess it's because I was fixated on who's going to be out. Maybe
who's going to be.
Now that Ward's playing, even if Restrepo was out, there's still some weapons. And you're right, that Iowa State
have weapons.
Defense, gosh, you're right. That's what would scare me about. I'm still going to be on probably Iowa State, but you're right, their defense would be concerning because we did see them give up the 45 to Arizona State, 45 to Kansas, 35 to UCF. You start to look at some of the better offenses that they faced. I mean, they shut down Utah, big deal. They shut down Cincinnati. Cincinnati was okay offense, not great. West Virginia, Houston's got zero offense. So you're right. Over's definitely, I think, can play, especially with Ward now suiting up for Miami. Yeah, over's probably a good bet with the total. All right, Arizona Bowl. Miami, Ohio Redhawks, the MAC runners-up. They lost blowout fashion in the MAC championship game to Ohio. They're taking on Colorado State. We got Miami 3-point favorites, 42.5 the total in this game. This is where you're going to have to do some digging. This game is going to be Saturday, December 28th on the CW network. That means it's probably going to be Tom Brenneman, the exiled Tom Brenneman, doing the play-by-play because he's been doing a lot of their games for the CW this year in college football. Miami does have a few players in the portal. We'll keep an eye on that. Colorado State, meanwhile, we know obviously they've missed Horton for a while. Obviously, he's been out for a long period of time. Most of their potential absences are injury related. There's nothing. There's a couple defensive ends, but not all starters that are going to be out of the lineup. So it's not a huge. There's nothing earth-shattering and massive as far as a deluge of players exiting either of these teams. The question is, does Miami want to bounce back from the MAC championship debacle? Sometimes betting on teams after losing their conference championship game, betting on them in the bowl game, especially if they're going to have everybody suiting up, could be a good bet. Maybe people see that taking Miami. We know they're a very good defense. They're probably still a better defense than Colorado State, even though they didn't look like it against Ohio. That was a terrible game for their defense that day. But Brett Gabbert looks like he's going to play. That's the good news. It looks like a lot of their skill position talent is in for this game. This one's an interesting one, but Colorado State was a point spread darling down the stretch. Let's not forget about how they played better after a rough start to the year. They finished the year very well, winning 6 of their last 7 games. The only loss was a 6-point loss on the road against Fresno State. That was their only non-cover as well. Finished the season 8-1-1 against the spread in their last 10 games. So very impressive run. They beat Utah State in their finale, 42-37. Offensively, even without Horton, they showed they were very capable. Braden Fowler, Nicolosi, Avery Morrow was great running the ball. They had guys like Jordan Ross, Dane Olson stepping up at receiver for this Colorado State team, which is good to see. They don't look like they got too many absences. I think it could be a bet-on type of spot here for Miami, but I also feel it could be a bet-on type of spot for Colorado State. So it has me really conflicted when it comes to this game. As of now, it's a pass. CMAC, Arizona Bowl. What do you think?
Yeah, I think this game's close. Like, I want the 3 a little bit here with
it's one of those games
Colorado
where
State.
Miami at a decent money line price. I'd probably lean that way. Anything 3 or certainly above 3, I kind of lean Rams and CSU.
Yeah, I think this might have gone too far. And how motivated is Miami, Ohio? Like, I think they're the better defense, but maybe not by much playing in the MAC. Maybe a little bit. Colorado State, at least down in conference play, I thought the defense was all right. Both these teams should be able to run the ball. They have a ton of success. Miami, Ohio doesn't do it as well as some of those MAC teams that just want to run it. Only 99th, 130 yards, and Colorado State gives up 155. So can there be any advantage there? But Colorado State ran it well all year, averaged 175. And Miami, Ohio gave up 136. So I think this game's just tight. I think it should be more of a pick 'em. And you talked about the few people that are in and out. I'm just going to look to see kind of who is in and out. Their quarterback or two and a wide out, it looks like, but not a ton of Bavano. So I'm leaning here the dog, the Rams, Colorado State.
All right, there you go.
Arizona.
Yep, there you go. And definitely from a location standpoint, definitely closer to Fort Collins, Colorado, than it is the state of Ohio. So we'll see what that influences as far as the crowd goes. But like I said, definitely closer venue-wise for Colorado State for that bowl game. All right, Military Bowl, East Carolina and NC State. We've got NC State 5.5-point favorites, 58.5 being the total here for this one. Gosh, East Carolina was a bit of a moneymaker for me down the stretch. There's no doubt. And then, of course, all of that was the players played their butts off to get Blake Harrell to be the permanent head coach after he was the interim head coach. They ripped off 4 wins, albeit, look, the one thing you got to be careful with the East Carolina resurgence is the wins were against Temple, Florida Atlantic, who had a brutal year and fired Tom Herman, Tulsa, brutal season, North Texas, very weak defense. Then they played Navy and they lost 34-20. But that was after they named Blake Harrell the permanent head coach. And I figured they lost their edge a little bit. They played their ass off to try to get him the permanent job. And then once he was named permanent head coach, they have their worst game since the coaching change when they fired Mike Houston after the Army game when they lost 34-20 to Navy. That being said, they definitely found something on offense. They were a lot more explosive. They were able to put up points in pretty impressive fashion. Turning to Caton Hauser at quarterback made all the difference in the world. And all of a sudden, the offense starts to percolate here for them down the stretch. Meanwhile, for NC State, how excited are they? Because they had the big win against their rival, North Carolina, 35-30, that final regular season game. C.J. Bailey has come a long way. That I will say, give him credit for it. C.J. Bailey's really improved after he took over from, of course, injured and then retired. I'm blanking on his name. The guy from the transfer from Coastal Carolina. Shit. Blanking on his name. But anyway, C.J. Bailey, took over from him. And certainly from that point on, Grayson McCall, there we go, who was injured and then retired during the season. But C.J. Bailey took over, and it was rough early. He said, this guy has no business being quarterback the way he's playing. But he really got better down the stretch, played some really good football. They put up a huge 59 against Stanford. It's not as good against Duke. Duke's got a pretty solid defense. I thought he played well in a loss to Georgia Tech. They could have won that game. They probably should have beat Georgia Tech in that game. Lost 30-29, and then they put up the 35 points against North Carolina. He had 242 passing yards. Smothers ran the ball well. Collins and Concepcion, the receivers, have stepped up, have gained better chemistry with NC State. So I definitely like over in this game. And this is not the same NC State defense this year either. Nowhere close to as good on that side of the football under Dave Doran. They gave up 30 to North Carolina, 30 to Georgia Tech, 29 to Duke, 28 to Stanford. I mean, they gave up 28 plus 4 straight games to finish the season. And this is a much better East Carolina offense that we saw down the stretch. So I definitely like the over. We'll see with NC State how enthusiastic they are. It looks like for East Carolina, it's going to be mostly on all hands on deck. Winston Wright, there was thought he might transfer, but he hasn't yet. And as of now, he's playing. And that's huge. That's their best receiver. And then meanwhile, for NC State, Concepcion is in the transfer portal for them. Will he play? We'll have to wait and see. But as of now, you lean no with these guys that are in the portal. So that's something to keep an eye on. I'm still leaning ECU plus the points. I think I like the over, though, even more. In this game here in the Military Bowl. ECU in the over for me if I get involved in it. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, I think East Carolina should be pretty good to go. I mean, I just see their wide receiver out here. That's about it. Maybe a linebacker or two. Yeah, they kind of ran into Navy after that game and struggled. You know what I love about these two teams? This is a pretty good rivalry and a good rivalry game normally. They haven't played since, 2022? That was 21-20. I think we get points in this game, but I think this game is close. You can't trust really both of the defenses. weren't really good. Some of the better NC State teams back in the past had blown them out, but ECU had beat them plenty when their football team was a lot better the last 10, 15 years ago, and some really, really close games. So I think you take the points here with ECU. I think there's plenty of motivation. They want to go and beat up on this Wolfpack team, and plenty of points. That's it for me here.
All right. Next up, we've got the Alamo Bowl. And, of course, this is the home base of Pub Sports Radio, San Antonio. And you got to wonder if any of those guys are going to check this game out. It's a pretty good game they got at the Alamo Dome this year, the Alamo Bowl in San Antonio. BYU and Colorado, two teams that almost won the Big 12. We've got Colorado, 3-point favorites, 54.5 the total. Now, with Colorado and all the players on this football team that have the potential to be drafted into the NFL, Shedeur Sanders and Jimmy Horn and Travis Hunter, of course, the Heisman Trophy winner. You know, you have to keep an eye on this. That being said, Deion Sanders has been on record, says he expects everyone to play here in this bowl game, that he expects all his guys to be there and on the field and playing for Colorado, including Hunter, including Shedeur. So we'll definitely keep an eye on this. If that's the case, I certainly would lean Colorado. There is a bit of a gap talent-wise between these two teams. I don't want to say it was all smoke and mirrors, but we could kind of see it with BYU that, you know, there was a lot of good fortune that went their way in that undefeated start. Now, don't get me wrong, there's good elements of this team, especially on the offensive side. With, you know, we saw glimpses of good play from the quarterback, Retzlaff, this year. Obviously, they can run the football well, two terrific receivers with Roberts and Lassiter. But at the same point in time, this was a BYU team that won a lot of games by the skin of their teeth that with a play or two here and there could have went the other way this season. And, of course, down the stretch kind of stumbled a little bit. Certainly ATS they did. They did not cut. They went 0-4 against the spread down the stretch, BYU. They lost that first game to Kansas State, and then the Arizona State loss, and then the Houston game they won, but they didn't cover at the end of the season against the Cougars. If Colorado's got everyone playing, it's Colorado or pass for me at -3 or better. C-Mac, what do you think here, Alamo Bowl?
Yeah, I don't know if they're all playing.
I'm hesitant because I'm buying into what Deion's saying that they're all going to play. Let me see, like, the day before Saturday,
yes,
December 27, Saturday, December 28. Give me a date. Let's fast forward to, let's say, the Friday night, a night before this game. Let's see where we're at with the Colorado players and if they're actually going to play. Because I'm not totally buying it just yet. I
don't think you should put your money. I'd wait. Too. A lot of these bowl games you do, but like especially if something like this. This one thing with BYU that went a little bit down the stretch was their defense. I just don't think they were very good. If they are all in, this game goes over, I think.
Yeah.
I think you can get there. I think both teams could score enough. I think BYU. That's if everyone
track indoors too, Alamo Dome.
Indoors. And the Alamo Dome. I mean, I think there'll be big plays made on both sides for these offenses. As BYU, the darling ATS, how about Colorado start of the year 0-2 and then going 9-1? Just the Kansas loss, which I did fade them in that game. But 9-1. I mean, if you were backing them, you were raking in the cash. That's for sure. So, yeah, just to wait. If they are all in all points, if not, I'll have to look at this again. Maybe I think BYU, if they don't play Sanders and Hunter, I mean, I think BYU could be in this game. So be on top of that with the news.
Indeed. All right. That is it for Saturday. No, there's one more on Saturday, December the 28th.
Yeah, one more.
This is Independence Bowl. This is not rescheduled. This is a new opponent. This was supposed to be Marshall versus Army, but Marshall was gutted by the transfer portal, decimated by opt-outs and injuries as well, and Charles Huff departing, and they backed out of the game. They said we can't field a competitive team and a competitive roster, so they backed out of it, and they were scrambling to find an opponent for Army, which tells me that Army's invested. They want to play this bowl game because they worked hard to try to find a replacement opponent for Army in this game, and they found one. Louisiana Tech is stepping up and is now playing Army here in this bowl game. Army 16.5-point favorites. That's about the price they were favored by against Marshall when this before this line and matchup got reposted. 44 the total. Look, this is Louisiana Tech, credit to them, first of all. You know, they didn't have to step up and say, we'll play Army, but they did. That's a credit to certainly them for doing that. Now, is it a team that I trust here? You know, considering all of a sudden, you know, this is what they do have some time, right? 12 days, you know, to try to get some preparation in for this bowl game. And again, you need extra time to prepare for the triple options, usually a good thing for teams. There's no question. And they've afforded themselves enough time to confirm themselves as a replacement opponent for Army that maybe they can step up, do well. And their run defense numbers aren't that bad, quite honestly, here, Louisiana Tech. But that being said, we talked about this earlier, CMAC and I, with Navy. If I'm going to bet against a service academy in a bowl game, I need a damn good reason to do it. And for Army, you look at the way they were disappointed and very upset with the way that performance went against Navy last weekend, losing the commander. Doesn't it feel like they're going to be all in for this game? And we've seen Army in the past under their current head coach here, Jeff Monken, where they have absolutely not just won games, they've destroyed teams in some of these bowl games. Like I've now know off the top of my head, we've seen some like 51-20 type of routes from Army in the past in these bowl games. And then you factor in Louisiana Tech's just stepping in last minute notice to be the opponent here in this bowl game. Yeah, it's a lot of points to lay in a bowl game, but put it this way, I ain't stepping in front of Bryson Daly, and especially if Bryson Daly plays, and I have a feeling he's gonna, because that's how he's wired. He doesn't want one of the great all-time seasons in Army football to end on a loss like what happened against Navy.
He's gonna play. The running back might be out, right?
Kanye Udo.
He's already maybe.
Yeah,
that's what I heard.
Kanye Udo may not go for Army in this game, but it looks like Bryson's going to play, and I think everyone else should be, pretty much good to go for this bowl game as well. Like I said, I don't know if I'm going to lace. It's a lot of points, but it's Army or pass for me. I'm not stepping in front of the Black Knights here. That is for sure. CMAC, what do you think? Independence Bowl.
I know. I hate that they lost that game. Kind of Daly's worst game, short fields, but and the defense wasn't off, but it wasn't their better defense. That's why Army had played so well down the stretch.
They looked fatigued. They looked gassed from Notre Dame, UTSA, Tulane, 3 big, intense games in a row, and I think they just hit the wall. They look fatigued. They look just gassed.
Yeah.
No gas in the tank.
I kind of like, if this goes over here, 17, because I'm already interested here in Louisiana Tech. A dog I took a lot this year, 8-4 ATS. They weirdly don't have the best offense. And in some of these games, they just played to like the score, like whether it was Jacksonville State, 44-37, or games like Western Kentucky, 12-7. Sam Houston, 9-3. They lost that game. UTEP 14-10. They do have a pretty good defense here. Now, can they stop a pissed off Army team in Daly? We'll see. But I think their numbers are pretty good. They got a lot of time, enough time now in the next 13 days, 12, 13 days. So I'm looking at La Tech here and the points.
All right.
A little opposite here.
Yeah, a little opposite. Well, I don't know if I'm betting Army. I'm just not betting against Army.
I know. I think they're this is a wait for me here, and I'd like to get over 17. Would be nice because I'm already moving that way. Like I think they could hang around here in this game.
Numbers aren't bad, Louisiana Tech, so maybe that helps them and the extra time to get ready for this Army team, which is always imperative if you're going to try to perform at your best against them. Having that extra practice time to try to.
I have a feeling in this game, I'd lean under. I think the defense will be better, and I know Daly will be better after that horrific game. Yeah, definitely. Lean under too.
All right, next up. All right, we move along. Now, this is going to be on Monday, December the 30th. It's actually the only bowl game on Monday, December the 30th. The Music City Bowl, Iowa and Missouri. Got Missouri 3-point favorites, 40 the total. This is, of course, Nissan Stadium, home of the Tennessee Titans. Yeah, I mean, when you look at Iowa, an offense that, is just nothing to write home about, albeit they went 9-3 to the over, but a lot of that was their defense not being nearly as good. The totals being low, the defense not being nearly as good as it was last year. That was, I think, just as big a factor in all these overs for Iowa as it was the offensive improvement. Because really the offense did improve a little bit, but there were times as well that they struggled. And look at that Nebraska game, even though they won. It was a pretty ugly performance from Jackson Stratton at the quarterback spot. And when Caleb Johnson can't run the football, just really makes things a lot more difficult for this Iowa offense. And that's really one of the places you have to start whenever you're looking at Iowa games. Can they run the football? And Missouri, not bad against the run, 133 per game allowed, 40th in the country. So we'll see if that run game works or not. If it doesn't, that's going to make things a lot more stressful on the quarterback, which is still a limited position here for Iowa as far as production goes. You just don't want to put yourself in a spot where the quarterback can win you a game. And we're going to have to see. McNamara looks like he's transferred out. And it looks like the other quarterback that got some playing time, Brendan Sullivan, may or may not play due to injury. So all of a sudden you're looking at maybe Jackson Stratton having to play here in this bowl game and start it for the Iowa Hawkeyes. So we'll have to wait and see if he indeed ends up playing. For Missouri, we have not had anybody really opt out yet because there's concerns. Brady Cook might opt out. Theo Weiss and Luther Burden, the two great receivers, might opt out. But we have not heard for sure that they will. And this feels to me like a wait and see game. Let's see if these guys are out. That remains to be seen. Oh, you know what? Actually, Burden is out for the bowl game. So he has declared for the draft, and he won't play. So we can't confirm Burden is out. And that's huge, obviously, their best receiver. But Weiss hasn't confirmed yet that he's out. Neither has any of the running backs. Brady Cook still, as of now, is playing. So we'll have to wait and see. Because I kind of want to take Missouri. I think its price is cheap for Missouri here, but I just want to wait to see who's in. CMAC, Music City Bowl, what do you think?
Yeah, I got to see who's in. This is an Iowa team, kind of both of these teams. I didn't bet a ton of this year at all. Like you talk about their games, we're going over a little bit. I don't trust the offense still, but I think he'll be all right if Stratton's in. I think he looked all right the last few weeks. We will see. I think these teams kind of are similar defensively, pretty good, not great in this game. But yeah, there's definitely some wait and sees. Will Cook play at all in this one? So totally for me, especially with this line 3, total 40, it's kind of like, yeah, nothing. Pass for now.
Now we move to New Year's Eve, Tuesday, December 31st, and the first game of 4 games on New Year's Eve. We have the first of the 4 non-playoff games, I should say. There is a quarterfinal game on New Year's Eve at night involving Boise State, but the other 4 games are bowl games, starting with the ReliaQuest Bowl. Alabama, how about that? Alabama not in the playoff. They're in the ReliaQuest Bowl instead, taking on Michigan. Alabama, 10.5-point favorites, 43 the total. Okay, throw out the roster situations because we don't know yet exactly who's going to play, who's going to be in, who's going to be out for this game. And we do have some opt-outs on both sides of this game. And we know for Michigan, there are a few. We know Colston Loveland's already declared for the NFL draft. And that's significant because he's like 80% of their passing game this year. And so without him, that's a hit for Michigan. And Alabama, though, they've got a bunch in the portal as well and potentials for opt-outs as well. Jalen Milroe does say he's going to play, but again, with this situation, let's see it before I totally believe it. But throw out all the opt-outs and who's in and who's out for just a second, and I'll ask you one question. How the hell can you lay 10.5 with Alabama with the disappointment of not making the playoff? Just that alone. How can you do it? I can't. So a priorium, this is either I bet Michigan plus 10.5 or I pass. I will not, and I cannot lay 10.5 here with Alabama. CMAC, what do you think?
And it's come down, from the opening number. I mean, it's just, you're supposed to be all these years, and then they make 12 team, and you can't get there?
How are you not disappointed? How are you not looking at this as God, we got to play in the ReliaQuest Bowl? How do you not have that kind of a thought process if you're Alabama?
I think Michigan's a little disappointed too, but they're not the favorite here. We're laying 13. It's now 10.5. I mean, Michigan here. There's going to be all the opt-outs. These kids are going to be going to the draft. We know it's Alabama and Michigan, so it's a wait and see. But it looks like for Alabama, at least some of these starters, of course, will be going. Michigan can't throw it. For some reason, I think they're in this game. I think their defense can keep it. The disappointment in Alabama. I mean, both these teams disappoint, but I think I'd rather take the 10.5 of them, like you just said, than look Alabama's way.
Yeah, I know they played all right in the Iron Bowl. Alabama, solid win, 28-14. But I'll say this
But
about
that's the Iron Bowl, though. I mean, they got to beat. That's a pretty big game.
Yeah, Michigan was competitive with Indiana. I thought against Oregon, even in that game, they could have been. It wasn't as bad as the final score indicated. Indiana, they only lost by 5. They covered. They destroyed Northwestern. We know the big upset against Ohio State in the regular season finale. And yeah, he still throws a couple of just interceptions that make you scratch your head. But even Davis Warren played okay at times. They were able to run the ball decently with Mullings and Edwards. It is going to hurt that they're without Loveland. I will say that, because now they're going to be more lack of it's not a great receiving core for Michigan. And now you take away by far your best pass catcher. And even though he's a tight end, he's better than anything they had at receiver, Loveland. So that is a loss for them, but it's still Michigan or Pat. I can't outlay 10.5 in this spot with Alabama. All right, Sun Bowl. We've got Louisville and Washington. Louisville 2.5-point favorites, 49.5 the total. In this game, this is always on New Year's Eve. Usually CBS has this game as well. Sun Bowl in El Paso, Texas. Now, Tyler Shuck has opted out. That's the big one for Louisville here. He's opted out. I think Harrison Bailey is likely going to go with go as the starting quarterback here for Louisville in this game, with Shuck moving on. And if you look at Harrison Bailey this year, he got into 2 games, 8 for 8. He didn't have an incomplete pass, 63 yards. In the 2 games he played. They were both early in the year against Austin Peay and Jacksonville State. He did not really play in any games since then, but he's likely going to be the quarterback. And obviously, with Tyler Shuck in the transfer portal. Louisville, as we know this year, an offense is kind of what carried the day for them. This wasn't as good a Louisville defense as they had last year. They definitely took a step back in that regard. Although they are coming off a very satisfying win against Kentucky. That felt like a big game for them. They really, Kentucky had owned them, and credit to Louisville. They finally stepped up. They had their big performance. I think this actually could be a bit of a letdown, believe it or not, in this bowl game coming off that Kentucky win. Meanwhile, you look at Washington in this bowl game, not horrible as far as the transfer portal is concerned. Will Rogers, how about the fact that in the final game, Jed Fish took him out for lack of effectiveness. And Jed Fish has already said for this bowl game that Damon Williams is going to end up starting for them in this game. He made his first start in that finale, of course, down the stretch against Oregon. He actually played pretty well. 17 for 20, 85%, against Oregon. I know they got beaten down 49-21, but I thought the offense played okay. The defense obviously couldn't stop Oregon. Now he's going to get the bowl practices to get ready for this game. I saw some potential there, and it's not like Louisville defensively was on solid ground most of the year. I know they played well against Kentucky. Kentucky's had a pretty rough offense most of the year. And there's been games, though, 52 to Miami, 27 to BC, 38 to Stanford. We've seen games where Louisville's defense has struggled. So you pair that with Shuck being out, Bailey being in. Yeah, the over, I think, is worth a look. I agree. I think the total's a little low, but I agree with the move to Washington. Certainly, I mean, when they were above a field goal, and they're the better defensive team as it is, Washington, a little bit statistically, but I still lean Washington even at the current number. I think they can win the game outright here in the Sun Bowl. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, it's a little different with, these quarterbacks, but I think this gets over as long as it's in the 40s here, 49, 49.5. Like, I think this can get over the number. Washington more of an under team by back, especially at home, but on the road they could give up some points. Yeah, you're talking about Williams started coming in the games before that, with Rogers not playing well. And a decent game, even though, Oregon just ran all over Washington in that one. That was a huge win against Kentucky because Kentucky just had owned them. But Shuck going to the draft. We'll see what this backup do. I think he could have some success. I still think you'll get some points here. Like, I mean, the Washington defense is better, but how motivated are they? In this game, I just think we get some points in this one, and I look Washington too. Here, I lean their way a little bit. I just haven't seen enough Williams, to look at this. This is one too. You mentioned after the big win, Chuck. There, will Louisville be motivated? These are the things to try to get in a little bit inside info. Like, are they really giving a shit about this? A few days before, or coaches leaving, or the kids not giving? They're out partying. The whole thing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, certainly, with a lot it feels like this is a recording. Check back a day or two before the game to see if anything changes with certain situations involving, opt-outs, portal movement, you name it. Because again, there's going to be a few where we're on this video and you're watching it a week later and things have changed. It's just the nature of the world we live in now in 2024. Trying to handicap college football bowl games. All right, next up we've got that's pretty much it. Yep, things change. Yeah, everything's fluid. Citrus Bowl. Speaking of fluid, orange juice fluid here for the Citrus Bowl. South Carolina and Illinois. We've got South Carolina 9.5-point favorites, 48 the total. Of course, as always, this game in Orlando, as it is every year, between in the Citrus Bowl. It's an interesting matchup. And look, where's South Carolina at mentally? This was a team that thought maybe an outside chance of sneaking into the bowl to the playoff, but you pretty much knew it wasn't going to happen. But nevertheless, it'll be interesting to see. It looks like everybody is likely going to play here for Illinois. So it sounds like Illinois is excited. Brett Bielema says that Altmaier is going to play, and most of the starters for Illinois should be available and starting for this game. So, that's a lot of points to be giving Illinois. And Brett Bielema is an underdog. We've talked about this before. And just as much as South Carolina, they've been kind of a bet-on team for me. They played great down the stretch. Now they're in a bit of a different point spread range. I have not heard anything as far as disappointment from South Carolina. Now, they do have some potential opt-outs, but nobody officially yet really has. And again, check back closer to game time. But even if everybody's plays for South Carolina, it already sounds like everyone's on board for Illinois. And, offensively, they've got their defense is what concerns me, because Illinois' defense did not play as well down the stretch. They gave up 49 to Purdue, which is still hard to believe, 38 to Oregon, 31 to Rutgers, 28 points to a mediocre Northwestern team as well in their final game, Illinois. So I think, their defense concerns me, especially with the fact that Lenore Sellers and the South Carolina offense, they really started to get it rolling and fired up down the stretch. 35 against Oklahoma they scored, 44 against A&M, 28 against Vandy, 34 against Missouri down the stretch. Clemson kind of held them in check, but it was a good defensive effort from them. I think the over could get there. It seems a little low for the way the South Carolina offense played down the stretch. And to me, Illinois, I like their offense more than their defense. Altmaier's capable of moving the football for them. They've got a good enough run game, some good weapons at receiver. Like I said, I definitely liked what I saw from them more offensively than defensively second half of the season. So I definitely lean over 48 with the total. But at 9.5, Illinois as a dog's not always been a bad bet. So as much as South Carolina is the better team, and they are, and certainly have, a bit of a edge as far as quality of player is concerned, there is that factor of you thought maybe you could sneak into the playoffs. You didn't. Are you going to be really locked in and geared in for the Citrus Bowl? Now is the next question. So for that reason, I lean Illinois, and good historical numbers for Brett Bielema in the underdog role. CMAC, what do you think?
Yeah, that's kind of the one thing in this game, because they're just better, I think, South Carolina. Better defense, for sure.
For sure, yeah.
Flat out. Great. The defense, and it got better a little bit as the year went on. And then, like, Sellers and Sanders, the two biggest. I mean, that is the offense.
Rocket Sanders.
Like, those two guys.
Sanders running it. Yeah.
Running it. And then Sellers, of course, throwing. I mean, he doesn't throw it a ton. They hit some big plays, of course, though, with it. But yeah, those are the two guys. So this is kind of a wait. But that's the biggest just thing. Like, Bielema as a dog with time, basically the whole team playing. I didn't like how the defense played down the stretch. The offense still looked pretty good. Can they move the ball here? Seems like if you gave me more than 10, I'd look at Illinois, and I'd love South Carolina all year. When they were a favorite, I know it was Missouri. They only won by 4 and didn't cover. Not a ton of times though. They were real big favorites. Like Akron, they blew them out, but kind of a decent team laying this kind of number. this year.
All right. Next up, this is the final bowl game that we will preview on this show, and this is the last regular bowl game prior to New Year's Day on New Year's Eve. This is the Texas Bowl, Baylor and LSU. We've got LSU 1.5-point favorites in this game, 60 the total, pretty much across the board for this one. This is obviously at home of the Houston Texans, NRG Stadium in Houston. I mean, obviously, look, Baylor's it's an in-state game for Baylor. I actually kind of like the way Baylor played down the stretch from what I'm seeing right now. It's a Baylor Bears team that Sawyer Robertson doesn't look like he's not playing. Looks like he's in, is what I see. There's a couple players in the portal along the trenches, but nothing significant. No major opt-outs yet. Meanwhile, you look at LSU, and 2 O-linemen have opted out. And both of them, by the way, are their left and right tackle. That's concerning. So now you're going to have backup tackles playing for LSU on the offensive line here moving forward. Nussmeier confirmed he's staying with the program, so you would expect Nussmeier to be the quarterback here. But as we've seen throughout the course of the season, when he's under pressure, that's when the mistakes sometimes can happen for Garrett Nussmeier. And now he's going to be working behind some backup tackles. And obviously they recruit pretty well, LSU, but still, you're talking about backup tackles. It's not necessarily something you really love to see. I mean, I'm definitely in on Baylor already. I took them. I like them in this game. I like the way the offense played down the stretch. Now, there is probably a defensive edge to LSU, but how much of a defensive edge? Because LSU's defense, okay, it played better against Oklahoma and Vanderbilt, but those are 2 offenses that are, okay, not great. They had to play good offenses. They didn't get stops. We still remember the Alabama game. It haunts me. How they gave up 42 points, couldn't figure out quarterback run from Jalen Milroe, and same damn thing with A&M. And I know Robertson's a pocket passer. Robertson's not a stiff in the pocket. Sawyer Robertson's not a statue in the pocket for Baylor. He can move a little bit. He can run with it if need be. So I think the quarterback run game might haunt LSU again here. Maybe not to the level of the athleticism of a Milroe and a Marcel Reed, but still, Sawyer Robertson can move a little bit. And that could be something that benefits Baylor here in this game. So as an underdog, I like Baylor. I think they can win this game. Lean over as well. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, I didn't have a ton in this game at all. One thing, Robertson's been great. If these Baylor team, they went 5 or 6 down the stretch and covered.
6-0 straight up.
He was good
down the stretch. Yeah,
he was good, but they ran the ball.
Yes.
The offensive line was great. I mean, towards the end of the year, they started the year not great. I think they averaged almost 190 on the year, and man, they were just pounding on these teams. Kansas, they just got gashed. Huge games. What do we get from LSU? They're going to have some of their receivers gone, it looks like, and their secondary. Most of these starters look like they're going to opt out. Some of their corners and safeties, so look out for that. Yeah, it's kind of a coin flip. I think Baylor's playing a little bit better. It should be a good game, and there should be points. And Baylor, like LSU, might have a little bit of a better defense, but I don't know. To me, it was a little bit the teams they played. But Vando, like if they get a team like Baylor, this gets to a shootout.
Yes, correct.
I think, and like the Alabama game, they just didn't score enough. And when you looked at some of the other ones, they just didn't score at all. But Oklahoma, they couldn't score at all. Vandy, that game was a lot slower. So I know this is high, but Baylor consistently got over this the last 6 or 7 weeks. So it should be a game where there's plenty of scores. Maybe just look team total if you like one side here.
All right. So there is the bowl games from after Christmas Day, starting December 26th through until December the 31st. Those were all the bowl games. We've gotten through them all now, but now it is time to shift our focus to what everybody's most excited about. And I'm excited for the bowl games, don't get me wrong, but obviously we're talking the first ever 12-team college football playoff, expanded playoff format, and 4 playoff first-round games to get things going starting on Friday night this week. We've got Indiana and Notre Dame, the first meeting between these in-state teams since 1990. And here they are meeting now again for the first time in 34 years with the stakes as big as they've ever been. Notre Dame, 7.5-point favorites, 51 the total in this game. So last week I stated on the show, I like Indiana at north of a touchdown. I like the over in this game because I think both offenses can move the football. And I still stand by those two opinions. I like Indiana. I bet Indiana at plus 7.5. I bet this over 51. I think when you look at Indiana's offense, sure, Ohio State bottled them up. They struggled a little bit in that game. Michigan did as well. I'm going back to that USC game again with Maeva against Notre Dame. I didn't like what I saw from Notre Dame's defense. I thought they didn't play great, and I was starting to think as I watched that game play out, if Indiana, you give Curt Cignetti, a great head coach, time, devise, offensive game plan that works, and they have a very talented quarterback, Curtis Rourke, who's been around the block, comes from Ohio. He's got a very good arm. He's a big guy. He can move around just enough in the pocket. I think there's plays to be made, and Indiana's offense has an ability to have success because you start to also look at the Notre Dame schedule, which I mentioned last week. And nobody's talking about this just enough. People are talking about Notre Dame, what a season they've had, the gaudy record that they've had this year with just the one loss, albeit the shocking loss to Northern Illinois. But this schedule, of Stanford, Georgia Tech, when Haynes King didn't play for Georgia Tech in that game against Notre Dame, Navy, who were a good team but a weak schedule. Florida State stinks. Virginia stinks. Army, again, albeit they were impressive in that game, Army really feasted on a very light, weak schedule this year. And then in the USC game, 49-35, it was fucking 2 pick sixes in a game that was right there for USC for the majority of that football game. And again, the Notre Dame defense against USC in that football game gave up, shockingly, almost 500, almost 600 yards of offense. 557 total yards for USC against that Notre Dame defense. I think you give this brilliant coach in Cignetti, what a season. I mean, it's unbelievable he got it. Even with there was some weakness in the Indiana schedule, clearly, as well. But still, to get this team from where they were last year to 11-1 in the playoff is just incredible still. And he has gotten the most of this team all season long. Don't be shocked if he gets the most out of them again. And I don't know about the win, but pushing Notre Dame to the limit and making this a close one-score game down to the wire would not surprise me in the least. And for Marcus Freeman, as much as we love the job he's done this year, and he's done a good job, that's why they re-upped him. There's some big game questions with him, and let's see if he can get it done in these big spots, with the extra 10. He's got to match wits with someone that, to me, right now, as far as this season, is as good as it gets in college football, and Curt Cignetti. And let's see if Marcus Freeman can meet the moment and match Curt Cignetti in a battle of wits, because that's what people aren't talking about that enough. You can talk about offense versus defense all you want, quarterback versus quarterback, who's going to stop the run, who's going to stop the pass, who's going to be better in the trenches. Now with these teams all having for these playoff games 2 weeks to get ready, coaching and quality preparation is going to be just as important as anything in these 4 college football playoff first round games. I think Cignetti, to me at least, is someone there's not many others I would back as happily as Curt Cignetti in spots like this. So I'm going to take the Indiana side plus the 7.5, and I'm going to go over the total because I think Indiana can do enough on offense. The one thing about Indiana's defense, feasted on a lot of weaker offenses, and there's no denying how great Notre Dame, Riley Leonard at quarterback, Jeremiah Love at running back, and how awesome they have been on offense throughout the season, especially of late. They have been a juggernaut. 31, 49, 31, 51, 52, 35, 49 in back-to-back games. To me, this total is just too low, and I think Indiana will struggle on defense against them because Notre Dame's offense is definitely playing well. So I like this over, but I like the Hoosiers to keep it to 1 score. Where are you on this one, C-Mac? Our first of the 4 first-round playoff games, Indiana, Notre Dame.
Yeah, it's like Notre Dame team that just has been able to run it all year. Crazy. Like around 230. And Indiana has the best run defense, but you got to look kind of at the schedule like you were talking about on who they play. But I still think they're pretty good. And I think they're going to be in this game. I like both these coaches. Both these teams, this is the best ATS Notre Dame team in a long time. I need to look that up. But now, not only the 11-1 record, but to go 10-2 ATS. Usually Notre Dame, they were not winning big. They were losing games like they did earlier in the year and not covering against Northern Illinois. But I think Indiana's going to be ready to roll here. They got the taste. They got a little bit of their ass kicked to Ohio State. I had to stay off that game, but I think they're going to be in this one. And one thing, the defenses are good. Notre Dame's defense has been good, but I saw, some teams move the ball on them. One thing why they've been so great is turnover margin. I mean, they're tied for second, 16 in the country. They've got that all year long. They've had, that's just a good team. Sometimes it's a little bit of luck too. And so I think it's a little bit of both. But I think Rourke will have a pretty good game. It's interesting, the total. And I think the offenses kind of went out too. Maybe this does get over. I hadn't gone through the total like a ton in this one. I just think Indiana keeps this game close. That should be super, super tight. And I think they're ready for the challenge. I think Cignetti's going to have them ready for it here. And I think Freeman is too. So give me the +7.5 in a tight one.
All right, we are on the same page there. That's Friday night. That's the only playoff game this Friday night, December the 20th. The other three are on this Saturday, December 21st. And we start at 1 p.m., noon Eastern, I should say, 9 a.m. Pacific on Saturday. SMU and Penn State. Penn State 8.5-point favorites, 54 the total in this game. Not so big game, James Franklin laying 8.5. Not for this guy. That's all I'll say about that. And I know it's Happy Valley. It's a home field advantage. And remember, all these first-round games are true home games. They're in the home field of the team with the higher seed. So it's a home game for Notre Dame and Notre Dame Stadium in South Bend, the Friday game. This one's at Happy Valley and a Penn State home game. And we know they get a good atmosphere there, but they get a better atmosphere at night. I think it's actually a benefit here for SMU that's an early game. It's not going to be the whiteout. It's not going to be nearly as crazy raucous environment as it would be if this was, say, a Saturday night game. Put it this way with Penn State. You look at their games this year against the absolute best teams on their schedule. Even USC was a 3-point game on the road as a 4-point favorite. They barely survived with a win by a field goal against USC. They lose to Ohio State at home, 20-13. And Ohio State, while they're really good, this is an Ohio State team that's had their blemishes too. They lost to Oregon. They lost their final game to Michigan in the regular season. And then, of course, the final game of their season, which was the Big Ten championship game. And I'll say this, Drew Aller and the offense looked awesome. Absolutely tremendous, but they could not stop a single thing against Oregon. And that's why they lost 45-37. The offense did their part. Drew Aller was fine, was very good. You got 230 rushing yards for Katron Allen and Nick Singleton combined on the ground. Tyler Warren, the tight end, was good with 7 receptions and 84 yards, but they could not stop that Oregon offense. And for me, that's what it boils down to. We've got some evidence building that, yes, Penn State's defense came into the year as one of the best defenses, lauded as one of the best defenses in college football. Well, you gave up 45 to Oregon. You gave up 30 to USC earlier this year, and you gave up 20 to Ohio State. And if I'm not mistaken, that was a cold, windy day in Penn State. So that probably mitigated the scoring a little bit. I still don't know if Penn State's got a defense against a very good offense, the strength of SMU for sure. Kevin Jennings and his dual threat ability, athleticism, can throw, he can run, and he's gotten better and more accurate throwing the ball. When he needed to make a great pinpoint accurate throw to tie that game late against Clemson in the ACC championship game, he did it. And I think when you look at it, certainly that's, I think, what gives Kevin Jennings confidence that he could, be able to move the football here against even this Penn State defense. The big concern for SMU for me is probably more on the defensive side, because we saw them give up 42 to TCU, 27 to Louisville, 27 to Duke, 25 to Pitt, 28 to Boston College. Clemson, obviously, especially in the first half. Cade Klubnik had incredible success moving the ball against SMU's defense. And look, if Penn State plays anywhere close to the way they did offensively against Oregon, they will move the football and score points here in this game against SMU. So what I really like in this game is the over. This is another over. These are the first two games in these playoff games are the ones I like over. And this is another one where with SMU Penn State, I like over 54. I don't like the side as much, but at 8.5, I'll dabble in SMU to keep this one competitive. I can't lay 8.5 with Penn State and that god-awful straight-up and ATS record for not so big game James Franklin against top 5 opponents or any sort of big-time team. It's just constant with this guy. Lost to Ohio State this year, lost to Oregon this year. escaped USC. You lose to Ohio State and Michigan every year you play them in the Big Ten since he's been here. How do you lay 8.5 with that big game track record that he has? Can't do it. So, again, there's concerns I have for SMU's defense if Penn State's going to roll with their offense, both in the passing game and the running game, the way they did against Oregon. So that's the concern with taking SMU, but I'm taking them anyway, plus 8.5, and I like the over even more. C-Mac, what do you think of this one?
I think if you take Penn State, you take their team total, maybe in this game.
I agree with
like,
that.
maybe, like if you can take them just to win, that's all that. Like if you do like a part, but I think they could win this game, but I'm not going to lay 8.5. I think they will be able to move the ball here a little bit. One thing in this, too, SMU's defense has been just up and down. They have been pretty good on the road, but this place is going to be jacked up here at Beaver Stadium. Of course, it's going to be cold. It's going to be 25 degrees here. I don't think SMU's played in a ton of real cold games.
There's a little bit that way in Charlotte, but this is going to be even colder.
Nowhere. This is going to be way colder. Yeah.
That is a concern. That is. I agree with that. Penn State's more used to that kind of a weather and environment and climate than SMU is.
And James Franklin, though, we've gone enough with him. I mean, holy shit. He just can't be back laying points. I just can't do it. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to put my
8.5? Gosh almighty, no. Yeah.
Yeah. No way. And we saw the bad SMU, the bad first half, and then come back, in the second half. Everything just was going bad for them, though, early in that first quarter. Everything. Turnovers. The flags were going against them. Yeah. I mean, just it was horrible. But they came fighting back. They have to take care of the ball in this one. But I think Penn State, if you look at them, just take their team total in this game, I think they get there in the end and probably win this game. Yeah, no way. I lay 8.5.
All right, next up, it is Clemson and Texas. This one, of course, in Austin, another college football playoff first-round matchup, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific on Saturday. This is the second of the triple header on Saturday of playoff games. Texas, 11.5-point favorites, 51.5 the total in this game. To me, the fundamental handicap, and I'm pretty sold on this now, and this is a game where it's been, I lean Texas. I just think there's so much potentially to be so much better than Clemson in the trenches here in this game. But I keep coming back to the fact, can I get enough production, red zone efficiency, and ultimately finish from Quinn Ewers and the Texas Longhorns offense to trust them as a double-digit favorite? Because one thing I'm very confident in, Clemson is not moving the football consistently against this Texas defense. I don't see it. I do not see it at all. I do not see much success happening for Cade Klubnik. And I know everyone's going to talk all week, and I know I'm going to hear it about he's an Austin, Texas kid, and because of that, watch, he's going to play the game of his life. I'll see it before I believe it. That's where I'm at with that. Against this defense, which has been very good all year, and that defense that did everything, and I mean everything, humanly possible to allow them to try to win that SEC championship game against Georgia. The defense played their guts out for Texas in that game. They just didn't get enough from the offense. They sputtered. They stalled in Georgia territory throughout that entire game, and just not enough, from Quinn Ewers, to finish drives. And that's a game they should have won because it was 22-19 Georgia in overtime. You look at the yardage. I mean, almost 400 yards for Texas. They had an over 100 yardage advantage in that game against Georgia, but they just failed.
It was like 250 to like 10, Babano, at halftime in that dominating first half. Yes. Yep. It was insane.
It was insane.
6 points. Yeah,
and that's the fear for me here, that they move the ball, and they will. I think they will move the ball against Clemson, but can they finish enough? And they just seem to implode, and penalties and holding and drop passes, and Quinn Ewers taking a sack at the wrong time. I was very disappointed we didn't see more Arch Manning run game and packages for him, and I thought we'd see that from Sark against Georgia. Maybe he's saving it for this game because this is the game that's even more important, playoff game here against Clemson. Maybe we'll see a little more Arch Manning in the red zone more often here in this game. So I truly believe this has the potential to turn into a 2-touchdown win for Texas, and I don't trust Clemson enough. Clemson benefited from turnovers and some good fortune early against SMU, and then the adjustments were made at halftime, and Clemson did nothing, on offense in the second half against SMU. And SMU turned that game completely around. Clemson got a good kick return after SMU tied it, and they didn't have to get far to get in field goal range, and they were able to hang on, survive, and win. It's going to be a taller order against Texas. I lean to lay in the points. This is a favorite I do like in Texas, but I kind of feel like the better bet because there's that part of me that says, well, what if Texas is just a shit show again when they get the ball in Clemson territory like they were against Georgia? The better bet might be if you want to bet against Clemson like I do, take Clemson team total under. That might be the best approach. I think that is the best approach. Rather than laying 11.5, because I'm still a little sketchy on whether we get enough execution and efficiency from the Texas offense, take the Clemson team total under. That I do feel good about, because I don't see Cade Klubnik and the Clemson offense, which, again, this is not the greatest pool of receivers they have to test the secondary of Texas either. I don't see them moving the ball up and down against this really good Texas defense that played well down the stretch, did everything they could. And the team total is in the 20.5, 19.5 range right now. With Clemson, I would look at that under. I don't think they're cracking 20 points in this game. And this is a game for the full game total. I would lean under as well. I think it's definitely going to fall under that 51.5. I hope it's something along the lines of, 28-10, something like that in favor of Texas. That's kind of what I have in my mind as a potential. I just don't see Clemson moving the ball with a ton of effectiveness. If they do, credit to them. But it would be something that really surprises me, because I don't buy into Clemson offensively against the best defenses they've played. Look at the Georgia game, the first game of the year, when they got completely shut down, Clemson, in that blowout loss to Georgia. So I lean Texas, but I think the better bet if you want to fade Clemson and bet Texas is just take Clemson team total under and put more of your money on the Texas defense rather than the Texas offense for this playoff game. C-Mac, what do you think here? Clemson, Texas.
Yeah, that's what we talked about last week. I think that's the move here, and the under in this game too. I think the full game under will get there, unless Texas all of a sudden is going to be great in the red zone and score a ton of points and maybe get over their team total. But when I go back, like, Georgia was lucky to get 22. A&M did have a chance or two, but they weren't scoring more than 14. They only gave up 7 to him. To me, this defense, is top 3, and it's been one in a few categories, and it's one especially against the pass. The secondary has been really, really good all year long. They only gave up 140 yards through the air, and the run defense is good too all year long. They barely give up 100 yards on the ground. I don't know if Clemson's going to get much there from their offense through the run game too. So, and then you got to put in the hands of Klubnik to win the game. I don't think so at all. Their offense, though, it's just to watch it go down in these games, even against A&M, and then like Arkansas at Arkansas, it's just sputtering down there, doing nothing. Turnovers, like you talked about, sacks, flags, just the whole thing. Like, maybe being at home will be good for them after what happens. And you got to get back up for this. Like, you lost that, but fuck, this is the playoffs now. Like, that, all that shit goes out the window.
They've probably already forgotten that SEC championship. This is the game that matters.
Yeah. But I have to say, Sark here is just a big game. I don't know if I want him. You know what I mean? That's why I like the team total under and the under these bets. Like, I think they win by 2 touchdowns. But he's another guy that hasn't proven or shown me really shit at all. So this just isn't one of Dabo's better Clemson teams, so it's tough to look at them.
Yeah, I can't get Clemson versus Georgia out of my mind. And this is probably the best team, but certainly the best defense Clemson's played since Georgia. And we saw what Cade Klubnik and them did against Georgia.
Yeah. I don't think they played anybody. South Carolina, pretty good. That was a low-scoring game right at the end of the year. Yep.
Yeah, they only
pretty
scored
good defense
in that game. They only scored 14 in that game. So that tells me that the team total is the best bet. If you like Texas like I do, and you're worried about the offense like I am, because I don't want to be there like a dope with 11.5 in my pocket laying the points, and I get a 20-10 final score instead of 28-10, where they're just not efficient enough offensively to cover the number. but they do shut down Clemson, and they win like I said, 20-10 or 20-14. That kind of a fine. I don't want to deal with that and lay 11.5 when I could have bet the team total under on Clemson and won. So that's why I think if you're in my shoes here and you think Clemson's going to struggle to move the football against Texas, take the team total under for Clemson. 20.5, 19.5. Both of those numbers are out there because I think they're going to have a hard time breaking 20 or 3 touchdowns in this game. And the evidence points it out. 14 points against South Carolina, and obviously what happened early in the season against Georgia, when they got completely shut down in that game and only scored 3 points against the Bulldogs. All right, final first-round playoff game, Saturday night to wrap it up, Tennessee and Ohio State. We got the Ohio State Buckeyes 7.5-point favorites, 47 the total in this game. Oh, boy. If I'm Tennessee, you know what my thought is coming into this game, and I'm saying it to my team if I'm Josh Heupel? Don't start on time. Start on time. Play your best football right out of the gate, because if you have a strong start in the first quarter and you get the lead, that stadium there in Columbus, it's going to turn tight. It's going to turn nervous. They're going to start turning on, everybody. Because in that Michigan loss at the end of the regular season at Ohio State, Michigan goes in there, 3-touchdown underdog, almost winning outright. When things started to go south in that game for Ohio State, especially with their offense, and Will Howard's getting booed, the offense is getting booed, Ryan Day is getting booed. It really, you could tell it was getting to Ohio State. It made them even more nervous, more tight, and they didn't play free. They didn't play an easy brand of football. And if you're Tennessee, your first goal, primary goal, CMAC, get the lead. Put a seed of doubt in the Ohio State team. Put the seed of doubt in the fans who are going to get all anxious, all nervous, all tight. Maybe the boo birds will start to come out if they have a bad start to the game, because they are feeling the pressure. And, Ryan Day's got to not only win this game, but probably have a long playoff run, at least maybe even to the championship game, probably for him to survive. Now, the problem here is Tennessee's offense kind of disappeared after the early incredible start where they were putting up monster numbers, but a lot of that was against weaker teams. I got to admit, Nico Iamaleava and the offense hasn't been nearly the dominant group we've seen down, early in the season. But once they got to play better defenses, look, they struggled and lost to Arkansas. They only put up 17 against Florida, only 24 or 23 against Florida, 24 against Alabama. Struggled in both of those games. It took a while for them to get rolling against Kentucky as well. And they had those games where, it was just a work in progress for the offense. But they did get rolling a bit down the stretch. Georgia, obviously, they struggled a bit. Now, they did get rolling a bit down the stretch. Mississippi State, though, UTEP and Vanderbilt were the opponents. I thought the Vanderbilt game, though, was still a pretty good game and a good sign for the offense, because Vanderbilt's not bad on defense. This year, they've been not bad on defense, and Tennessee had a heck of a day. It was 281 rushing yards with their great running back, Dylan Sampson. It was 257 yards through the air for Iamaleava against Vandy. That was a positive sign for this Volunteers offense that's kind of been up and down, in the latter part of the season. Now, Ohio State, let's see how healthy the O-line is for Saturday night, because they had a ton of injuries on the offensive line, and you could tell it's impacting the offense. Will Howard has less time to throw the ball, and all of a sudden the run game's not working as well. They had 77 rushing yards with Judkins and Henderson combined against Michigan. And the offensive line injuries, CMAC, were a big reason for that.
I know.
Michigan. Now, are they going to get healthy bodies back? We'll have to see for Saturday night. There's still a lot of up in the air about multiple starting offensive linemen here for Ohio State. Where did the passing game go as well? And by the way, this Tennessee defense was very good for the most part this season. And so can they move the football effectively enough, Ohio State? And then you turn it around, though, and you see the defense, which all year people have just given Ohio State all kinds of praise about their defensive front, how good it is, how they get pressure on the quarterback, and all that. Well, when you actually look at the Michigan game, no sacks, none. All I heard was this great defensive front all year for Ohio State. Elite, one of the best in the country. No sacks against Davis Warren in that Michigan game. All I heard was how great they were stopping the run. And then all of a sudden, there's Michigan, CMAC, 172 rushing yards. Khalil Mullings, 116 rushing yards. against that Ohio State D. They couldn't stop the run all of a sudden. So you got a team that all year we raving about this D-line, not so much me, but, other people, pundits, observers, people that comment on college football. What a great defensive line, one of the best in recent memory. Really? I just saw Michigan. I saw them get 0 sacks against Michigan, this so-called great defensive front. And this so-called great defensive front, you can't run on them, people have said. And here's Michigan with 116 rushing yards from Mullings and 172 rushing yards as a team against Ohio State. There's too many cracks in the armor right now with Ohio State for me to lay 7.5. It's that simple for me in this football game. Take Tennessee or pass for me. And I'm probably going to grab the Vols a little bit. Now, I know for them, this is cold weather, Northeast, Saturday night for a SEC, Southeast U.S. team, SEC team, and that bothers me, kind of like we talked about with SMU. Do they shrivel in the cold, Tennessee, in this game? That is a concern. But I don't have the faith across the board in this coaching staff. I'll put it this way. You had all fucking year to prepare for Michigan, a Michigan team that's way down from last year, not even close to the McCarthy team and Harbaugh team last year. And you're chomping at the bit to beat them. You had all year to prepare for and game plan and get your team fucking ready to play Michigan this year. Much worse than they were last year. And you not only played awful football, both sides of the ball in that game, you lost outright as a 3-touchdown favorite to Michigan in that game. I have lost complete faith and confidence in Ryan Day and whatever coaching staff this is that he's got with him after that. This was the game you had circled all year. You needed it to get into the Big Ten championship game and even get a better seed in the playoff and a bye through to the quarterfinal. And that's the performance you put out there against a way down Michigan team compared to last year when they won the national championship. That's enough to say I can't lay 7. And it's more so not I can't lay 7.5 with the team. I don't know if I can lay 7.5 with this coaching staff. And just the miserable, even Chip Kelly with the game plan too. Like they abandoned the run too much. And some of the stuff was this, side to side stuff instead of going north south with the football. I mean, even the play calling from Chip Kelly was baffling at times in that loss to Michigan. Just collectively, this is a unit I feel they're tight. It's a noose around the collar. They're feeling some significant pressure. They're feeling some significant stress. If you don't believe me, listen to any of the quotes from Howard. You listen to any of the quotes from Ryan Day. There's some fucking stress right now and pressure on this football team. And you don't always play your best under this kind of pressure. And we're seeing it now from Ohio State. We saw it in the Michigan game. That game got close. They realized, wait, we're not going to blow these guys out. And the longer that game stayed close, the worse they started playing Ohio State. So your goal for Tennessee is get this to be a close game in the fourth quarter, and you can probably snatch it at the end with probably the waning confidence Ohio State has to pull out some of these games right now in the latter stages. So bottom line is Tennessee, anything above 7 for me is Tennessee or nothing for me in this game. C-Mac, what do you think?
Well, let's just get to what you hit on real quick is, jump on them. We talked all year how this is one of the worst first quarter teams in the country. Ohio State, slowest moving. They're not awake. They're not off the butt. I don't know what it is, but they seem to not get going really the second half.
Actually,
their second quarters have been
first quarter in this game. If you can find a first quarter spread on them.
Well, I started to have like kind of smaller bets because sometimes they'd be down 7-0 to like Northwestern, some of these teams, and then do you take them live? And that's something here too. Like if you like Ohio State, maybe wait, because I wanted to bring that up, just how bad they've been early. If they get down and you can get them just maybe win the football game of Tennessee, can get there. All the talk, like it can't be easy. Like you got to rise above the talk with Ryan Day. I mean, they want him gone. Yeah. Like even winning this game is not going to do it. Like it's basically they got to win it all. The title game. It's what I hear. He's out. So and all year I talked about Howard. This is what are we going to do in the big games? I didn't think he'd come up clutch. And in games like this, I don't trust him that much, and I don't at all. So it's tough. Even though this is being at home in the real cold, like you were talking about, I think it is good for them. And they got to lean. Both these teams have good defenses, but man, that leads me to the under here. I don't trust really the offenses at all. Can that Tennessee defense that was pretty good. All year Georgia, they kind of gave it up. They let up 31, but they only gave up 17 to Bama, 17 to Florida. They just were gritty, and the numbers show it. And of course, Ohio State, like you're talking about, all those crazy numbers. Now, there was only 16 passes for Michigan, but I still get it. No sacks is not good for this front that they have been raving about. But I question, that O-line needs to be healthy. With the 3 or 4 guys that have been banged up, they have to be able to run the rock here at Ohio State in this game at home to have success. So that just means tick, tick, tick. And that I'll look live, like I talked about, situation. That's the great thing with these two. We don't have to have a bet on something, and we'll all be watching these to look to make a bet live on what's going on. But pre-game here, I do like this under at this number. I'd be on the under or nothing here.
All right, there we go. Under or nothing here for I kind of lean under too. Like I said, I like the first 2 games over. I like the under in the Clemson game. I lean that way here. The only concern is I don't always gravitate to betting on unders when it's in the 40s, when I know one of the teams is going to play lightning fast.
Yes, there's a little wiggle room.
Yeah.
But their offense isn't dynamic. No. That's the thing. Like, to me, maybe against some of the bad teams, they look like it early on. But some of the play calling still has question marks for me, where I think Ohio State will be all right. But I get what you're saying.
This deserves the Saturday night slot of the 4 playoff games just because of the drama and the tension surrounding Ohio State going into this game.
Yeah.
This is like a referendum on the whole, team and program under Ryan Day this game. And if it's a giant flame out and they're bounced in this game, there's going to be some changes. There is no question about that. But that's a fascinating viewing experience Saturday night with the 4th and final first-round playoff game in the shoe between Tennessee and Ohio State. All right, there you have it. That is our show for this week. We appreciate everyone joining us. Shout out to everyone in the chat. Let me rhyme off everyone that's here. Al, Sean Kelleher, Bama Boy, Gold Jew, Nasty Nate. Good to see Nasty Nate with us. Myron Kidd, MMA Locker Room. Good to see him as well. Lonnie Smith. Appreciate everyone joining us in the chat. Hit the like button. We'll make sure we get these individual game preview videos posted on the channel later in the week. And remember, we're back next Monday, which will be our final show for this year for the college football side. Next Monday, December 23rd, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. We'll preview the 4 quarterfinals in the college football playoff and 4 bowl games post-New Year's Day, starting on January the 2nd. The Gator Bowl, the First Responder Bowl, the Mayo Bowl, and the Bahamas Bowl. Okay, so there are 4 bowl games after New Year's Day. We'll preview those ones next week, as well as the quarterfinal round of the college football playoff. C-Mac, anything to add before we say goodbye?
No, I think you nailed it. Give us a like, give us a subscribe, all that fun stuff like I talk about. And yes, join us next week. Changing of the stuff where we thought we might just do 2 shows, but we got to do the 4 games next week and then the 4 extra bowl games. So a shorter show, but last one of the year, like you talked about. And that is it. That's at it. Let's get out of here, bud.
That's right. And yeah, we're off Monday, December 30th. Okay. The Monday between Christmas and New Year's Day, there is no hitting.
We'll be back.
Show. We'll be back on January the 6th, which will be before the semifinals. And we'll do a nice 1-hour show, nice and quick on the 2 semifinals on Monday, January 6th. And then Monday, January 13th will be the season finale for the college football edition of Hitting the Books, when we'll do our national championship preview show, which will be 1 week before the game. So you can watch us live on the 13th. If you miss it, where there's a video will be up on the channel for a full week before the game takes place. And we'll get you ready for the national championship game. And don't forget, we're also on Friday this week, college basketball, Hitting the Books, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. How good was that best bet, Xavier, for me, Saturday against Cincinnati? Wire-to-wire point spread. They probably should have won that game. They led a good part of that.
I had that in the under. Like I talked about. It was I needed. It was great.
Yeah. Good stuff. So more college basketball winners coming up Friday, and it'll be basically the Friday show for the rest of the year. It's going to be hybrid. We'll preview a couple of the games on Friday, but most of the previews will be for the Saturday college basketball slate. So Friday at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. Join us for the college basketball edition of Hitting the Books. That's a wrap for Connor Mack. I'm Ian Cameron. Have a great bowl season. Good luck. Enjoy the games. Enjoy the playoff games in the first round coming up later this week. We'll be back next Monday for the college football edition of Hitting the Books, and, of course, Friday for the college basketball version of Hitting the Books as well. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time, class dismissed.